Chapter 461. To Midgard. Marco might appear fine on the surface, but there could be hidden complications in his body that he didn't mention. Alaric didn't want him to fight a warrior like Loras in that kind of condition. However, he also couldn't bring himself to reject Marco. This might be Marco's chance to step to another level. What should I say? Alaric pondered deeply. He sent Giovanni a look hoping to hear some kind of advice from him, but the latter turned away, clearly with no intentions of intervening with the situation. This guy. Alaric was exasperated. Looking at Marco's hopeful face, he took a deep breath and said, "Lord Marco, I'm sure you know that Loras is no ordinary transcendent knight. Fighting him could be dangerous even for you. Are you sure about this?" Marco nodded with determination. "I have thought it through, Your Highness. No matter the results, I will accept it even if I end up dying." Hearing this, Alaric sighed helplessly. "You shouldn't say that, Lord Marco. We won't let that happen. Since you have already decided, I won't stop you anymore. You have my approval, and I'm sure Lord Ignatius is the same." Ignatius nodded in agreement. "If you think that is an opportunity to overcome your limitations, then you have my full support." Marco was overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you for your trust. I will not disappoint you." Alaric said a few more words of encouragement to Marco. "Your Highnesses, my lord, I will take my leave first. I want to make some preparations before our departure." "All right, you may go." After bidding them farewell, Marco left the city hall. "Do you think he can advance to the next realm?" Giovanni suddenly asked. Alaric raised an eyebrow and shook his head. "It's hard to say. Even Lord Kristin, the undisputed rank 1 in the Estanian Dragon leaderboard, failed to become a mythical knight, but who knows? Maybe Lord Marco will give us a surprise." Alaric smiled faintly. He could see everyone's EXP through his appraisal trait, so he could tell if someone was about to advance. In Marco's case, he was still quite a distance from it, so it was unlikely for him to become a mythical knight soon. Among the people he had encountered, only a few were on the verge of stepping into this fabled realm. One of them was Kristin Evander, the commander of the Griffin Knights Order. Giovanni was dissatisfied with his response, so he turned his head to Ignatius. "What do you think, Lord Ignatius?" Ignatius smiled faintly and replied, "Marco definitely has the potential to become a mythical knight, but I think that he still needs more time. Stepping into this realm is far more difficult than one could imagine. Just having a large amount of mana isn't enough. You need to have the right mental fortitude and sufficient talent to advance to this level." Giovanni furrowed his eyebrows and fell into deep thought. Alaric placed his hand on Giovanni's shoulder and chuckled in a teasing voice. "You are still far from it. I might even advance before you do." Hearing this, Giovanni pushed him back and snorted. "We'll see about that." Alaric shrugged. He then cupped his fist to Ignatius and bid him farewell. "I will be taking my leave first." He waved at Giovanni and left with his subordinates. Meanwhile, Giovanni stared at his back and mumbled with a chuckle. "That arrogant prick. My lord, I must go now. Just call me if you need anything." He nodded to Ignatius. "Go ahead." Ignatius waved his hand with an amused smile. A few miles from Helona, Leonard's troops stopped to set up camp. The Crown Prince was speaking with his subordinates when a messenger bird suddenly flew towards him. "You may leave." He dismissed his subordinates. After they left, he took the letter and opened it. "This," Leonard revealed a knowing smile. "They thought that we fell into their elaborate trap. How funny." The letter was from a scout unit he sent to Midgard, and it mentioned a shocking piece of information. An enemy venerable was stationed in the mining city. Leonard had a hunch that the enemy venerables were not in Nakalub, and it was just a ruse to confuse them. It seems like they have a strategist on their side. A mocking look flashed in his eyes. "Lord Dominic," he called out. Whoosh! A figure appeared next to him. "I'm here, Your Highness." My subordinates confirmed it. There is a venerable stationed in Midgard. This means that there is a high chance that one is stationed in Helona too. Hearing this, Dominic didn't give much of a reaction. He looked at the Crown Prince and asked, "I see. Aren't you worried about them?" Laynard knew who he was talking about. He shook his head and let out a smile. Lord Ignatius is with them. Why should I be worried? Besides, Lord Criston and his Griffin Knights Order are also with them. That's true. Dominic laughed. Laynard's face suddenly turned serious as he spoke. We will proceed according to plan. I will send Lord Lucas to cause a commotion. Once he draws out their venerable, that's when we will strike. Dominic cupped his fist respectfully. I will follow your arrangement. He didn't mind listening to the Crown Prince's orders. Although he had stronger martial power, he didn't have Laynard's military tactics. Laynard stared at the distant city with narrowed eyes. Tomorrow, Helona will fall into our hands. The next day in Atarkan, 300,000 warriors left the city under the lead of Ignatius. On the surface, it was Alaric and Giovanni leading the troops. They had deliberately made this arrangement to confuse the enemies and also to check if there were still spies in their midst. Midgard was quite a distance from Atarkan, and with the size of their army, it would take them more than a week to get there. For this trip, everyone prepared rations and supplies enough to last them for a month. Chapter 462. Fooling the Enemies. 4 days into their trip to Midgard, the army set up camp between a hill and a river. This river was connected to Lake Ventura, and due to its unique location and natural environment, the water from the river was drinkable. They chose to camp here for this very reason. At this moment, Alaric was cleaning his swords with a cloth when he noticed someone approaching him. Your Highness, a letter from our scouts. It was Aldrin riding on his horse towards Alaric. The second he arrived in front of Alaric, he jumped off his horse and handed him a sealed letter. Alaric gently put down his swords before he took the letter from him. Based on the special markings, the letter indeed came from their scouts. Written in the letter was a coded message that only Alaric and a few people from House Silversword could understand. A tunnel? Alaric furrowed his eyebrows. The letter mentioned the discovery of a tunnel, and according to the scouts, there was a high chance that it was a shortcut that led directly to Midgard. If that were true, they could save a few days of travel if they were to make use of the tunnel. However, Alaric felt that something was suspicious about this. What happened? What is written in there? Asked Giovanni, who was seated on a log next to him. He felt curious when he saw the change in Alaric's expression. Before responding, Alaric waved to Aldrin, motioning for him to leave. The latter understood his intentions and immediately left after giving the 2 princes a deep bow. After he left, Alaric burned the letter and said, Our scouts discovered a tunnel that they believe is connected directly to Midgard. Giovanni raised an eyebrow. Isn't that a good thing? If what they said is true, then we can save a few days of time. Alaric shook his head. I feel like it's too coincidental. Why would they make a tunnel that is directly connected to their city? Don't you think it's suspicious? It's like they want us to enter the tunnel. Hearing his words, Giovanni frowned. Now that you mention it, it's indeed sketchy. Maybe they are trying to lure us into the tunnel, and when our army is inside, they will bury us all, he exclaimed at his own conjecture. Alaric stared at him in surprise. Since when were you this smart? With a furious look, Giovanni grabbed a stone from beneath his feet and threatened to throw it at him. Say that again. Alaric ignored him and rose to his feet. I think you are right about it. They must have prepared that tunnel for invaders or looters. Hearing this, Giovanni let out a smug smile. Those idiots! Did they think that we would fall for their tricks? Suddenly, Alaric thought of something and revealed a cunning smile. Hold on. I have a plan. Giovanni sent him a questioning look. All right, let's hear it. Alaric grinned and beckoned to him. Follow me to look for Lord Ignatius. You two can hear it together. Giovanni was a bit displeased, but he still followed Alaric. Fine. A moment later, they found Ignatius in his tent, getting some shut-eye. With Ignatius's powerful perception, he immediately sensed their presence even though he was asleep. He opened his eyes, stepped out of his tent, and gave them a deep look. What happened? Why did you two come to see me? Alaric told him about the scout's report, and he also told Ignatius about his suspicions. A tunnel that directly leads to Midgard. That is indeed suspicious. No sane official would agree to build something like that, unless there is something wrong with that tunnel. Ignatius rubbed his chin thoughtfully. My lord, we could make use of that tunnel too. Alaric told them about his plan. Ignatius was initially disinterested, but when he heard his plan, his eyes flashed with approval. Not bad. We can do that. Giovanni was also impressed and sent him a thumbs up. You are indeed my cousin. We will make them think that we entered the tunnel and then… Alaric explained the next steps of his plan. Meanwhile, in a fort inside Midgard, tens of thousands of warriors could be seen doing their military drills. The person monitoring their activity was a tall and muscular man with long, wavy black hair. Stab! He shouted with authority. As soon as his words fell, the warriors on the drill ground stabbed out their spears in unison. Their synchronized movement created a snapping sound in the air. Pull! Stab! The man repeated the commands over and over again, but no one emitted a word of complaint. This continued until a messenger came and rushed to the man's side to report something. Commander, our scouts spotted enemy troops heading to the tunnel. Hearing this, the man frowned and muttered, So they have come. Tell our scouts to continue monitoring their movements. If they enter the tunnel… His eyes suddenly turned cold as he muttered, Bury them all at once. The messenger took a deep breath as he nodded. Yes, sir. I will deliver your words to the scouts. Loras dismissed the messenger with a wave of his hand. I haven't gotten word from Atarkin for a while now. Had it fallen into the enemy's hands? Thinking about this, he narrowed his eyes. Since they had gotten word that Estanian troops were heading to Harun, he couldn't get a proper sleep. He still hadn't forgotten how they had been defeated in Ackland Pass. They only managed to occupy a few small villages and cities, but they were quickly driven out when Estanian reinforcements arrived. What made him more furious was how his comrades unjustly died because of Lemuel's stupid decisions. Author's note: Lemuel is the old strategist who participated in the Battle of Ackland Pass. Lemuel, that goddamn bastard. I will find a way to kill him soon. Because of their defeat, Lemuel also received severe punishment. He was stripped of his noble title and was banished to Halona. Loras had been thinking of ways to kill the old man, but Lemuel had hidden himself well, so he couldn't find the chance to eliminate him. He shook off his thoughts and looked at the warriors before him. Attention! He shouted. The warriors immediately lowered their spears and looked at him with straight faces. My brothers! Estanian troops are heading to Midgard as we speak. Their numbers are reported to be 300,000. Are you afraid? No, sir. Their resounding response echoed across the city. Loras nodded in satisfaction. Make your preparations. We are heading into battle soon. Yes, sir. The next day, Alaric stared at the collapsing tunnel with an unreadable expression. Now, let's see how they will respond. He mumbled. He turned around and nodded to Ignatius. My lord, everything is going according to plan. Any minute now, the enemies should receive the report about the collapse of the tunnel. Once they send their troops to check the situation, it is time for us to strike. Ignatius nodded. You have done well, your highness. Leave the rest to me. Alaric cupped his fist. Yes, my lord. Now, what they needed to do was wait for the troops of Midgard to take the bait. They would then attack them from 3 directions and sandwich their troops. When evening came, Midgard's troops finally appeared to check the situation. Alaric, who was hiding in the bushes with his troops, felt the ground tremble as the enemy troops headed to the collapsed tunnel. Squinting his eyes, he roughly estimated the number of enemies. There are only about 100,000 of them. They must have left half of their troops in the city, but that is a big mistake. Thinking about this, he sent a hand signal to the archer behind him. The archer nodded and lit the tip of his arrow before sending it flying into the air. Bang! The arrow exploded as soon as it reached its peak. In the next moment, Alaric unsheathed his swords and squeezed his legs. Charge with me! For Estania! Kill them all! Their sudden roar caught the enemy by surprise, which caused confusion in their formation. Meanwhile, Giovanni and Ignatius, who were hidden in separate locations, also led their troops to charge at the enemies. With 3 armies attacking them from different directions, Harun's troops fell into disarray. However, something unexpected happened. An army that numbered over 100,000 rushed out from another direction. I knew something was up. Do you think I would be stupid enough to fall for your tricks? Loras bellowed as he led his troops to join the battle. Soon, the sounds of weapons clashing echoed. Alaric frowned when he noticed them rushing towards the rear side of Giovanni's troops. My dear cousin, just try to hold out for a while. Do not falter. We will claim victory tonight, he shouted to the surprised troops. His words ignited everyone's morale. Chapter 463. Alaric and the Undaunted Heavy Cavalry. I need to destroy these people quickly so I can go and help Giovanni. Alaric raised a sword and shouted. Undaunted Heavy Cavalry, stay close to me. We must crush them. We obey your command. Upon hearing his call, 100-man cavalry unit dressed in heavy steel armor came rushing towards him. Author's note. For reference, check chapter 398. Leading them was a transcendent knight wearing a horned helmet. He wielded a sword in his right hand and a rectangular steel shield on his left. With the heavy cavalry unit by his side, Alaric charged into the enemy lines, tearing through everything in his path. His swords moved like a blur, cutting the enemy's bodies into pieces. Stop them! An enemy officer shouted in an attempt to contain the situation. As his words fell, thousands of Midgard troops rushed over, brandishing their weapons at Alaric and the heavy cavalry unit. Seeing this, the commander of the Undaunted Heavy Cavalry, Einar Baristane, shouted to his subordinates, "Protect His Highness!" The heavy cavalry unit quickly responded to his command. They gathered towards Alaric, protecting him from all sides. In the next moment, the enemy warriors struck them hard, but the heavy cavalry unit's formation didn't even budge. They were like an immovable fortress, durable and strong. How is this possible? We can't break their formation. The enemies were left stunned when they realized they couldn't penetrate the defenses of the heavy cavalry unit. There are only 100 of them. Gang up on them, the enemy military officer shouted ferociously. More enemies charged towards Alaric's group, rushing fearlessly like rabid beasts. However, the Undaunted Heavy Cavalry didn't even flinch despite being surrounded from all directions. They brute-forced their way and penetrated through the enemy's formation with unstoppable momentum. At this moment, Alaric took a deep breath and shouted with a fierce look, "Open a path for me!" The members of the Undaunted Heavy Cavalry opened a small gap in front, just enough for him to pass through. Alaric didn't waste any time and rushed out. "Hold your ground and kill as many enemies as you can," he roared as soon as he stepped out of their protection. Like a tiger out of its cage, Alaric brandished his swords wildly, leaving a string of corpses in his wake. No one could stop him, not even the military officers of Midgard. Just then, 2 transcendent knights led hundreds of troops to attack him. Their battle cries echoed with intense fury. Alaric narrowed his eyes and gripped his swords tightly. It's time to get serious. He used the dual sword technique he had mastered, which was strengthened by his mana. With every strike of his swords, he froze the air, which significantly decreased his enemy's mobility. "Ah! My arm! No! Wait! Don't key dash!" The screams of his enemies drifted into his ears, but Alaric felt no remorse for them. With an indifferent expression, he cut them down. After half an hour of intense battle, thousands of enemies fell. Alaric didn't know how many people died at his hands. His swords, his armor, and even his mount were drenched in blood. It looked as if he had come out of a mountain of corpses. "I'm drenched." He frowned and used his mana to remove the filth that clung to his skin. Looking around, he found himself surrounded by countless corpses. The warriors of the Undaunted Heavy Cavalry were close by, trying to catch their breath after that intense battle. "How is everyone doing?" Alaric asked as he looked at Einar. Einar sheathed his sword and took off his helmet. He then wiped off the blood on his face as he replied. Aside from a few injuries, everyone is all right, Your Highness. Alaric nodded. Prepare yourselves. That was just the beginning. Your servant understands. Meanwhile, on Giovanni's side, things were different. Your Highness, the rear units are requesting support. An urgent voice drifted into Giovanni's ears. This is bad. The situation has become unfavorable for my troops. Gritting his teeth, Giovanni tried to come up with a solution, but he couldn't focus his mind due to the overwhelming number of enemies. Your Highness, leave it to me. Just give me 5,000 warriors. Hearing this, he lifted an eyebrow and looked at Derek, the former dragon guard who was now working for him. Author's note: in case you have forgotten this character, see chapter 336 for reference. Can you do it? Giovanni asked skeptically. He felt that 5,000 warriors wouldn't be enough to stop the rampaging troops led by Loras himself. Derek nodded with a gloomy smile. I will try my best, Your Highness. Giovanni hesitated for a moment before he gave his approval. All right, you have my permission, but you must come back alive. I can't have you dying here, Derek. Derek grinned at him. You must be careful too, Your Highness. You now have a wife waiting for you at home. Hearing this, Giovanni chuckled dryly. Fuck off. Derek no longer wasted his time. He cupped his fists and left with his subordinates. After his group left, the pressure on Giovanni's troops increased. Hold your ground. Don't let them push you back, he shouted. His words didn't have much of an impact since everyone was busy trying to survive. The situation here is still manageable. I hope the rear units can hold up for a while. Otherwise, the whole army will collapse. Derek brought 5,000 warriors to support the rear units, but by the time he arrived, he found out that half of the rear units had already perished. The remaining half were struggling to survive. Knowing that the situation was dire, Derek unhesitatingly charged towards the enemies as he roared. Half of you follow me. The rest will create a barrier using the corpses. We must use every means necessary to slow them down. Hearing his words, his troops immediately divided into two groups. One followed him into the battle, while the other group jumped off their horses to build a wall using the scattered corpses. Chapter 464. Reinforcements are here. The arrival of Derek's troops gave the rear units some room to breathe. However, this didn't last for long. There are too many of them. That Loras guy hasn't even stepped in, but we are already being pushed back. Derek was starting to get exhausted as the battle continued. The troops he brought were also running out of stamina. Sir, we cannot hold them back anymore. We must retreat. One of his subordinates shouted anxiously. Hearing this, Derek shook his head, his face unsightly. Not yet. If they retreated now, Loras's troops would breach their formation. If that happens, Giovanni's army would collapse. We must hold on until the barricade has been made, he shouted to the troops. Although they were exhausted, the rear troops accepted the command. They also knew that defeat would follow if they allowed the enemies to advance. A bitter struggle followed. The rear units, which were composed of more than 20,000 soldiers, were quickly reduced to 3,000. It was a one-sided slaughter. Even the troops that Derek brought with him were helpless, and a huge portion of them had already died. Those who had survived were covered in injuries, and they looked like they would collapse at any moment. Looking at the remaining troops, Derek gritted his teeth and shouted, "Everyone retreat to the barricades. Quick!" Hearing this, everyone abandoned their opponents and retreated with haste. On their way to the barricades, close to 1,000 of them had fallen. Meanwhile, Loras's troops were still going strong and showed no signs of losing momentum. Derek watched the approaching enemies with an exhausted look. The barricades wouldn't be able to stop them for long. At most, we can only hold them back for another half an hour. By then, what's left of us will be decimated. At this moment, the enemies had already reached the first line of barricades. The barricades were just walls of corpses. They could slow down the average horses, but the well-trained war horses could simply jump over them. Sir, they are about to reach the second defensive line. Derek revealed a bitter smile. I overestimated the barricades. We might not even last a quarter of an hour. Just as he was about to give his command, he suddenly heard the fearsome battle cries from their right side. HM? This sound comes from Lord Ignatius's side. Are reinforcements coming? A look of anticipation flashed in his eyes. The enemies were also startled by the battle cries. Their reaction confirmed Derek's guess. Reinforcements are here. Lift your heads. We can survive this battle, he roared with rising vigor. The surviving rear units felt invigorated. A sudden surge of strength coursed through their bodies. A moment later, thousands of arrows fell from the sky, piercing through the bodies of the approaching enemy soldiers. Lifting his head, Derek saw a large group of beasts flying overhead. It's the Griffin Knight's order. Feeling excited, he couldn't hide the smile on his face. It's them. The Griffin Knight's order is here. We are saved. About 1,000 members of the Griffin Knight's order came to their rescue. Moreover, the person leading them was Kristen Evander himself. It looks like we came too late. Kristen Evander mumbled in a gloomy voice as his griffin landed in front of Derek. The former dragon guard hung his head low at his words. It's my fault. Kristen sighed emotionally. Don't blame yourself, Derek. We didn't anticipate this coming. You should get some rest. Leave the rest to us. Derek shook his head. We can still fight. We will stay here and support the Griffin Knight's order. Seeing his determination, Kristen no longer insisted. All right, but don't overdo yourself. After saying those words, he pulled the reins and urged his griffin to soar to the sky. Whoosh! Under Kristen's leadership, the Griffin Knight's order launched a fierce offensive against Loras's troops. They threw javelins and rained arrows upon the enemy soldiers. Loras's troops were helpless against them, which resulted in a high number of casualties on their side. 20 minutes in, more than 10,000 warriors had been killed. It was a massacre. However, the Griffin Knight's order ran out of arrows and javelins, so they were forced to fight in melee combat. Kristen led his troops into a brutal battle, and they killed another 5,000 warriors in half an hour. They were dominating the battlefield until something happened. Loras revealed himself and led his troops into a ruthless counterattack. They were fearless and unrelenting. Even with many of them dying, they refused to back down. These relentless bastards. Do they not fear death? Kristen was starting to get annoyed. Griffin Knight's order, heed my command. Follow me to kill their commander. He roared, the veins on his face protruding. Loras was the greatest threat to them, so he must be killed first. The Griffin Knight's order moved according to his command. They urged their griffins to attack Loras. Roar! Roar! The furious roars of the griffins echoed, instilling fear into Loras's troops. Do not waver. I am here. Raise your weapons and strike those beasts. As long as they bleed, we can kill them. Loras's voice suddenly boomed, uplifting the morale of his troops. Those beasts aren't immortals. Stab them and they will die. Kill them all. A fierce battle followed. The Griffin Knight's order held the upper hand at the first clash. The griffins were heavily armored, so Loras's troops couldn't easily wound them. The beasts tore through the flesh of the warriors, displaying their innately cruel nature. Despite the overwhelming difference in power, Loras's troops didn't retreat. They persistently fought back, completely unafraid of death. Some unlucky warriors of the Griffin Knight's order were killed under their suicidal attacks, and the number of casualties on their side increased as the battle progressed. Kristen noticed that his subordinates and the griffins were running out of energy. This is bad. There are too many of them. Griffin Knight's order. We are retreating temporarily, he shouted. Chapter 465. Savage Tiger Battalion. Loras's troops cheered when they saw the formidable Griffin Knight's order retreating. Don't celebrate just yet. The situation is still dire. We need to help the troops trapped in their encirclement. Loras shouted in a booming voice. In that clash against the Griffin Knight's order, he had lost thousands of his men. On the other hand, the opposing side lost fewer than 100 Griffin Knights. It seems like I have to reveal my card now. He also had a specially trained unit composed of only the best warriors under his command, the Savage Tiger Battalion. This unit had 1,000 warriors, the weakest of whom were knights. It was also commanded by 5 transcendent knights. Thinking about this, Loras took a deep breath and beckoned to his deputy, a rough-looking middle-aged man with thick sideburns. "What are your orders, sir?" The deputy saluted respectfully. "Summon the Savage Tiger Battalion. We need them now." Loras spoke with a stern look. Hearing this, the deputy furrowed his eyebrows. Loras had been preserving the strength of the Savage Tiger Battalion, and he only intended to use them during the final clash with the enemies. Sending them now was premature, but the deputy didn't dare oppose the command when he saw Loras's dark expression. "I will get them for you, sir." Loras waved his hand, indicating that he should leave. Seeing this, the deputy didn't linger and left right away. Loras turned his head and looked at the enemies who were behind the barricades of corpses. "When will Lord Rudner join the battle? If he had joined earlier, we wouldn't have lost so many soldiers." He was dissatisfied with the inaction of the Venerable stationed in Midgard. While he was waiting for the Savage Tiger Battalion, the members of the Griffin Knights Order were catching their breath behind the barricades. "Sir, we lost 78 warriors and 31 griffins." A report came to Kristen Evander which made his face turn unsightly. "To think that we would actually lose so many warriors against those crazy men. I have underestimated them," Kristen muttered gloomily. Derek, whose body was covered in bandages, walked towards him and reported what he had seen. "Sir, there are no movements on the enemy's side. They suddenly stopped advancing as if they were waiting for something." Kristen frowned upon hearing this. "They were so ruthless earlier when they fought us. Why did they stop now?" He couldn't understand the sudden change in the situation. He felt like Loras was preparing for something big. "Keep an eye on them and report to me immediately if you see any signs of enemy movement," Kristen instructed. "Yes, sir." Derek nodded, turned around, and left to deliver his instructions to the troops. In the next half an hour, both sides seemed to have tacitly agreed not to send any troops. This gave everyone enough time to rest. However, this didn't last for long. After about 40 minutes, the ground suddenly trembled. "Sir, the enemies are advancing," a warrior anxiously shouted to Kristen. They finally ran out of patience. Kristen snorted. He jumped onto his griffin and roared to his men. "Griffin Knights, we have rested enough. It's time to finish this battle." "Yes, sir." In the next moment, the Griffin Knights Order followed Kristen as they charged towards the approaching army. Something is different about this army." Kristen frowned. The advancing enemies only numbered about 1,000, but their aura was more intense compared to the tens of thousands of warriors they had fought earlier. "Sir, I think that is the Savage Tiger Battalion," one of his subordinates exclaimed. Everyone's faces became serious. The Savage Tiger Battalion was considered one of the strongest units of Harun. Although it wasn't directly under the control of their imperial family, it was strong enough to compete with the Imperial Guards. Each member of the Savage Tiger Battalion rode a wild beast called the Red-Striped Tiger, which was classified as fatal grade beasts at juvenile stages and disaster grade during adulthood. Shockingly, all of them were riding adult red-striped tigers. These beasts might be smaller than griffins, but they were more ferocious and brutal. "Don't be afraid. We are having tiger meat after this battle," shouted Kristen as he brandished a lance that was almost twice as long as his body. He urged his griffin to move faster while channeling his mana into his lance. After gaining enough momentum, he swung his lance with heavy force. Whoosh! The Griffin Knight's Order is more formidable, he roared with a ferocious look on his face. Bang! With one swing, multiple enemies were sent flying, their bodies torn apart by the sharp winds. He didn't stop there. He poured more mana into his lance and delivered another swing. Whoosh! This time he killed more than 10 riders with one move. Mind you, the warriors he killed weren't ordinary men. They are members of the Savage Tiger Battalion. However, his slaughter was put to a stop when one man arrived. "I will be your opponent." Loras, who was wielding a massive war hammer, appeared out of nowhere. He raised his warhammer and swung it down hard. Seeing this, Kristen snorted and lifted his lance, clearly unafraid of exchanging blows. Clang! A powerful shockwave erupted as soon as their weapons collided. Kristen narrowed his eyes as he looked at the man before him. So this is Loras Marchand. This guy is more powerful than I thought. He had great confidence in his strength, but he realized that this man was just as strong as he was. You must be Kristen Evander, the commander of the Griffin Knights Order. Loras glared coldly at him. Kristen didn't respond and just pushed him back by exerting more strength on his lance. Loras grunted and squeezed his legs tightly to prevent himself from falling off his mount. In that clash, he found out that Kristen was stronger than him by a small margin. It might look like they were equal in strength, but it was only because his warhammer was heavier. Fighting this old man will be tricky. He clicked his tongue in annoyance. Old man, your subordinates are already tired from the battle earlier. You will not win against my Savage Tiger Battalion. Loras didn't want to use this kind of cheap method, but provoking Kristen was the only way he could think to make the old man reveal his weakness. Shut your damn mouth! Kristen roared furiously as he swung his lance. The force behind his attack was so powerful that it sent sharp winds that could slice through even rocks. Loras covered his body with mana to protect himself from the sharp winds. Bang! He managed to block the old man's lance, but his mount's armor received heavy damage. Try running that mouth again and see what happens. Kristen's cold voice drifted into his ears. This old fogey is more irritable than I expected. A moment later, the two clashed once more. Bang! Bang! They were so powerful that no one dared to get close to them. Everyone was afraid to get involved in their fight. While the two heavyweights were fighting, the battle between the Savage Tiger Battalion and the Griffin Knights Order was becoming increasingly violent. Meanwhile, Alaric and the undaunted heavy cavalry had already headed deeper into the enemy's formation. They were surrounded by enemies on all sides, so they weren't afraid to unleash chaos everywhere. They wildly swung their weapons without care for whoever they cut down. Your Highness, everyone is showing signs of exhaustion. We have to regroup with our troops while we still have the energy to move. Einar Barristain spoke in an urgent tone. Alaric shook his head and responded with a faint smile. You have nothing to worry about, Sir Einar. We didn't come here alone. Our people should be here any time now. Einar raised an eyebrow. He looked around, but due to the chaotic situation, he didn't discover anything. Despite his doubt, he chose to trust Alaric. Your servant understands. As the battle progressed, the defensive formation of the undaunted heavy cavalry showed signs of weakening. Just when they were about to collapse, they suddenly saw something astonishing. The Midgard troops that had surrounded them were pushed back by another army. Kill them all. Don't spare a single soul. A roar echoed. It's Sir Galliner. Our reinforcements are here. The members of the undaunted heavy cavalry cheered when they heard the familiar voice. In the next moment, Galliner appeared and bulldozed his way into the enemy encirclement. He was like an unstoppable beast, fearless and ferocious. With every swing of his sword, multiple enemies would perish. The people who came with him were also the top fighters of House Silversword. Sikas, Azazel, Fredrin, and many others had come. They displayed their overwhelming strength, demolishing the enemies with their raw power. Alaric smiled upon seeing their unrivaled presence. He raised his sword and bellowed, Warriors of House Silversword, let's end this battle. Chapter 466. Rudner Crestor. The arrival of House Silversword's top warriors broke the balance. They unleashed unstoppable carnage on Midgard's troops. They were like a group of monsters freed from their shackles, ruthless and invincible. Screams of terror and despair echoed as soon as they arrived. Ah! Help me! Stop! I surrender! No! Not my leg! Ah! Alaric didn't even have to do anything. He just watched as his subordinates slaughtered everyone in sight. No one could put a stop to this unbridled massacre. Some enemy transcendent knights tried to fend them off to give their comrades time to escape, but even warriors at their level couldn't hope to contend against these highly skilled men. It's a one-sided massacre. So this is the strength of House Silversword. Marco Harold watched the scene unfold with a look of surprise and amazement. He came here with the rest of the high-ranking warriors of Estania to offer support, but he realized that their presence wasn't even needed. "I made the right choice to follow His Highness," mumbled Michelle Catherine Jimena, the Viscountess and the head of House Jimena of Birming Island. Author's note: if you forgot this character, see Chapter 348 for reference. When the imperial family was drafting soldiers for this expedition, she volunteered to join them. She even brought the elites of House Jimena to gain merits and increase her house's influence. "You certainly did, my lady." A Western region aristocrat nodded in agreement. While the others were standing there stupefied, the battle was slowly drawing to a close. Midgard's remaining troops broke through the encirclement and regrouped with Loras's army. "Don't let them get away. Chase them," Galliner shouted as he led the troops to chase the escaping enemy soldiers. Just then, a figure suddenly descended from the sky and landed in front of them. Bang! Galliner frowned as he looked at the man who had appeared out of nowhere. He was a dark-skinned, middle-aged man with a scar on his lips. He had short curly hair and a pair of obsidian eyes. His facial features looked ordinary, but the aura he exuded overwhelmed everyone around him. Galliner raised his fist, signaling his troops to stop. He took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes. This aura, he is a mythical knight. He had faced several mythical knights, so he was familiar with their special aura. It wasn't just him, Sekus, Azazel, and the others could sense it too. "Surrender and I will spare your lives." The middle-aged man spoke with a cold look. "You want us to surrender? Look around you. Can't you see what's happening?" A mocking voice drifted into everyone's ears. Another person descended from the sky. His entire body was covered in flames, and he landed in a much more domineering manner. "Lord Ignatius!" Estania's troops exclaimed in relief upon seeing this man. Ignatius waved at them and said, "Leave this man to me. You guys go and take care of the rest." "Do you think I will allow you to leave?" the dark-skinned, middle-aged man roared, his aura overflowing like a volcano about to erupt. Ignatius snorted and stomped his foot, releasing his aura to contend with the man. "Try stopping them." The collision of their auras almost forced everyone to kneel. "What are you guys waiting for? Go!" Ignatius urged them with a stern look. Hearing this, they no longer hesitated. Alaric stepped forward and raised a sword into the air. "Everyone, follow me to destroy the enemies. For Estania! For Estania!" Everyone echoed his words. In the next moment, Alaric led the army to chase after the retreating enemies. Before leaving, he took a glance at the dark-skinned, middle-aged man and used his appraisal on him. Rudner Crestor, Mythical Knight, EXP. 1998/10,000. Potential S. Traits: Spear Mastery SS. Close Combat SS. Pain Tolerance S. Horseback Riding S, Strength 699. Stamina 646. Agility 707. Vitality 619. Endurance 624. Mana 635. "Please win this fight, Lord Ignatius." Alaric prayed for his victory before pulling his gaze away. Rudner furrowed his eyebrows as he watched them leave. "I must keep them here." He channeled mana into his spear and was about to rush out when he saw a large fireball coming towards him. "HM?" Seeing this, he instinctively brandished his spear to deflect the fireball. Bang! The fireball exploded into the air and created an earth-shattering explosion. Rudner turned his head, his face unsightly. "Ignatius Firecrest, it has been decades since we last met. I thought we would never see each other again." "Rudner, you haven't changed. You are still the same grumpy old man that you were before." Ignatius responded in a mocking tone. "Shut your damn mouth and get out of my way." Rudner snorted as he pounced towards Ignatius while swinging his spear. Whoosh! Ignatius clicked his tongue. He raised his hand and summoned a burst of flame. Bang! Rudner cut through his flames with a swipe of his spear. He then pushed his spear forward, letting loose a fearsome wave of energy. Ignatius finally became serious when he saw Rudner using his weapon's engraved ability. "You are not the only one who can wield a spear," he mumbled as he created a burning spear using his mana. In the next moment, the two venerables clashed. Boom! Sparks and bursts of flame flew in all directions every time their weapons collided. When viewed from above, it looked like someone had lit up a fireworks display. "For how long can you control the flame spear?" Rudner sneered as he sent his opponent a provoking look. "Long enough to kill you," Ignatius responded with a disdainful smile. Furious, Rudner stimulated his energy core and delivered a series of powerful swings that caused the air to tremble. Whoosh! Whoosh! In retaliation, Ignatius summoned hundreds of scorching arrows that caused the temperature to rise up. Bang! Bang! Due to the intensity of their battle, they left numerous craters and cracks on the ground. It was as if meteorites had fallen on the surface. Chapter 467, Marco vs. Loras II. Since when did this guy become this powerful? Rudner couldn't believe it. When they last saw each other decades ago, Ignatius was significantly weaker than him. His flames weren't that much of a threat to him, and there was also a gap in their physical attributes. However, the person in front of him was no longer the same man. He had grown into a much more formidable expert, one who could threaten his life. Rudner had been fighting at his full strength, but he had never held the upper hand. "What's wrong? Do you realize it now?" Ignatius chuckled disdainfully when he saw the changes in his opponent's expression. Rudner snorted. "You may have grown a bit more powerful, but this strength is far from enough if you want to defeat me. You still won't admit it, huh? Stubborn old fart. In that case, I won't hold back anymore." Ignatius released more mana from his energy core to summon a humongous ball of flame. The heat from this huge fireball was so strong that it burned the grass around him. Even Rudner, who was a few meters away from him, could feel the searing heat. With his face covered in sweat, Ignatius stared deeply at his opponent and muttered, "You'd better use everything you have if you don't want to turn into ashes." After saying those words, he released the humongous ball of fire. Rudner knew that blocking this thing would be dangerous, so he imbued mana to his legs to temporarily boost his movement speed. He rushed to the side to evade the giant fireball. Boom! Rudner had already retreated quite a distance from the intended target, but the shockwave still sent him flying and the heat also melted his armor. Hiss! He quickly took off his armor and tossed it away. Looking down, he noticed some burn marks on his skin. "Luckily, I wasn't directly hit. Otherwise, I would have been in serious danger." He was terrified by the power behind that giant fireball. He lifted his head and looked at Ignatius. Rudner noticed that his opponent's complexion was slightly pale, and a thought flashed in his mind. That attack must have expended a significant chunk of his mana. "What happened? That was stupid of you. Do you think I can't evade something that slow?" he taunted. Facing his insulting remarks, Ignatius smiled faintly. "Really? Look behind you." Hearing this, Rudner felt goosebumps all over his body. He turned his head and saw something that made his face turn pale with fright. Above him were thousands of scorching arrows suspended in the air. There were so many of them that they blotted the sky. "Shit!" he cursed under his breath. Ignatius made a hand gesture, controlling the scorching arrows to fall simultaneously. Sue! 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 In the next moment, thousands upon thousands of scorching arrows fell upon Rudner. The man was flustered, and he quickly stimulated his energy core to cover his entire body with mana. "Damn you, Ignatius!" he roared furiously. Meanwhile, Alaric and the Estanian army had already joined forces with the Griffin Knight's order for a final clash with Midgard's troops. "Loras is mine!" A cold voice resonated across the battlefield. Everyone turned their heads and saw a middle-aged warrior charging towards the enemy formation on his horse. "Lord Marco, don't be reckless," someone exclaimed. Seeing this, Alaric frowned, but he didn't stop the man. Marco had requested this opportunity and he had already given his approval. Although it was quite risky, Alaric decided not to interfere. He raised a sword and shouted to the troops, "Cover Lord Marco. Don't let anyone get in his way for revenge." "Yes, Your Highness." The Estanian troops immediately circled Marco, defending him from enemy attacks. Marco sent the distant Alaric a grateful look before he turned his attention to the enemies. "Where is he? Show yourself, Lores." After he was discharged from the clinic, the first thing he did was train himself. He also did physical therapy to recover to his peak. He had received ample rewards from the last war in Ackland Pass, and he used all the resources he got to support his training. In the past month, he could sense his energy core throbbing unusually. It was as if he were about to step into a special realm. He didn't know if it was the fabled mythical realm, but the feeling was getting stronger as the days passed. Defeating Loras might give me an answer. Suddenly, his eyes stopped on one person. He saw a familiar figure within the enemy formation. He stood proudly, overlooking the battlefield with a cold gaze. "Loras!" Marco roared upon seeing him. He squeezed his legs and urged his horse to move faster. "Lord Marco! Slow down! Quick! Follow Lord Marco! Protect Lord Marco!" The Estanian troops gritted their teeth and followed him. "Loras!" Loras narrowed his eyes. He could sense someone looking at him. He turned his head and saw a familiar face approaching his location. That man. Suddenly, he recalled the person he had fought in Ackland Pass. "It's him." He took a deep breath as he pulled the reins. "So you came for me? Let's see how much you improved." He squeezed his legs, urging his horse to move forward. "Hiya! Warriors of Midgard, follow me. Show them the strength of Harun. Charge!" He roared as he raised his warhammer. The soldiers of Midgard, including the Savage Tiger Battalion, raised their weapons and followed him. "For Harun! Kill them all! Defend our lands!" Soon, the two sides clashed violently. The ones in the forefront were torn apart, their bodies exploding into a red mist. Even their mounts weren't spared. The poor horses flew into the air, their bodies cut into pieces. At this moment, Marco and Loras finally found each other. It was like a fated encounter between two nemesis. They glared at each other as they collided with great force. Clang! "We finally meet again." Marco stared deeply at the other. Chapter 468. "Even in death you smell revolting. You people killed my men. You will pay for this." Loras roared while pushing him back. Marco leaned forward to balance himself. He then snorted in response. "You don't have the right to say that. You bastards invaded our lands." Loras frowned. He wanted to say that it wasn't their fault, but the words were stuck in his mouth. With nothing more to say, he let his fury consume him. He gathered more mana into his warhammer and swung it with terrifying force. Whoosh! Seeing this, Marco could easily evade it with his speed, but he stubbornly blocked the attack with his sword. Clang! The intense power behind their clash made their horses neigh in protest, but the two seemed to be oblivious to this since their attention was focused on the other. After a few more rounds of battle, their horses finally collapsed from the pressure and exhaustion, forcing them to continue their battle without their mounts. "Your Highness, that man Loras has the slight upper hand. Things could be dangerous for Lord Marco if this continues." Fredrin spoke to Alaric as they watched the battle from afar. Alaric shook his head. "I understand your concern, but Marco asked for this. We just need to believe in him." While using his appraisal, he discovered that Marco's EXP was slowly climbing as the battle progressed. "I thought he would need a few more years to advance, but it seems like I was wrong." He found it unbelievable to see someone's power grow during actual combat. Seeing that he had no intention of interfering, Fredrin no longer said anything. He just stayed by his side, protecting him from any kind of threat. At this moment, the battle between Loras and Marco was starting to get more violent. The two Transcendent Knights were already covered in wounds, but despite the damage they had accumulated, they showed no signs of stopping. They fought relentlessly like crazed animals. Just then, Loras suddenly created some distance between them to prepare his final strike. He quickly filled his warhammer with mana while keeping his eyes on his opponent. On the other hand, Marco also unleashed his last bits of mana. His overwhelming energy was leaking out of his body. The mana he released was so dense that one could sense the fluctuations even from afar. In the next moment, the two released their attack almost at the same time. Bang! An earth-shaking explosion rocked the battlefield. Everyone nearby was forced to retreat to avoid the shockwaves. For a moment, everyone became still as they quietly waited for the dust to settle. They wanted to know who won that epic fight. When the dust cleared, they saw a lone figure standing in the middle of the crater. His body was covered in blood. He quietly watched the person beneath his feet as if celebrating his victory. It's Commander Loras. He won. Commander Loras won. Harun's troops cheered when they realized that the victor was Loras. Meanwhile, Alaric and the warriors of Estania still couldn't accept the results. No, he isn't dead yet, Alaric mumbled. His appraisal trait could only detect living beings, and it still worked on Marco, who was on the ground. Moreover, the latter's EXP was just a small distance from reaching the limit. Just as he was about to give the command to save Marco, something unexpected happened. The man that everyone thought was dead suddenly rose to his feet and stabbed Loras with his sword. Everyone was shocked by the quick turn of events. When they processed what had happened, Loras had already fallen on his knees, grabbing onto Marco's sword while looking at the latter with disbelief. How? Loras thought that he had won that final clash. With a deep look, Marco replied, "Your conviction wasn't strong enough." Loras was about to say something, but Marco pulled his sword from the former's chest and cut off his head with a single slash. Whoosh! Blood sprayed from Loras's headless corpse before it fell to the ground. After killing his opponent, Marco staggered and collapsed. Commander Loras! No! Harun's troops fell into despair when they saw Loras being beheaded. Kill that man. Tear him apart. We must avenge the commander. Furious, they rushed towards the crater, their eyes bloodshot. Seeing this, Alaric raised a sword and roared, "Don't let them harm Lord Marco. Protect him." The Estanian troops immediately charged towards the crater, and this caused another violent battle between both sides. While the two armies were fiercely engaged in battle, something startling happened in the fight between the venerables. Rudner was directly hit by Ignatius's scorching arrows, which left devastating damage on his body. He had severe wounds from his face down to his feet, making him look incredibly hideous. As for his armor, a huge portion of it had melted, and it had even stuck to his skin like glue. Damn it! I must escape. I can't die here. A thought flashed in Rudner's mind, but before he could do something, a mocking voice suddenly drifted into his ears. Rudner, you have become much weaker. The guy I fought in Ackland Pass was much stronger than you. How disappointing. Hearing this, Rudner turned around, his eyes overflowing with rage. Do you think you have already won? Ignatius, I still have enough energy to take you down with me to hell. Upon saying this, he ignited his energy core and forced out all the mana he had. The air around him fluctuated vigorously. Ignatius didn't seem to be afraid and even revealed a disdainful smile. Is this your last-ditch effort? How meaningless. He aimed the flame spear he was holding and threw it at Rudner with his full force. Whoosh! Rudner was stunned. He didn't expect his opponent to attack him while he was still preparing for his final move. Where is your chi chivalry? He muttered as he looked down at the gaping hole in his chest. He could see his own internal organs slowly melting from the heat. Chivalry? Who cares about that? With a cold smile, Ignatius conjured a fireball and released it. Whoosh! The fireball struck Rudner's head and exploded with a mixture of red mist. Ignatius looked at the half-cooked corpse and left with a shake of his head. Even in death, you smell revolting. The death of Loras and Rudner was a huge blow to Midgard's troops. They lost the will to fight, and more than half directly surrendered. As for the remaining half, they fought aggressively, but they were quickly wiped out by the Estanian troops. Looking at the corpses strewn across the battlefield, Alaric let out a deep sigh. He could see their comrades among the dead. He brought his hands together and prayed for their souls. "Your Highness, what should we do with those who surrendered?" Galanor's voice echoed behind him. Alaric looked away from the corpses and turned around. Galanor hadn't cleaned himself, so he was still drenched in blood. "Let's wait for Lord Ignatius's decision," Alaric answered calmly. Galanor nodded in acknowledgement. "All right, I will inform the others to keep an eye on them for the time being." Alaric nodded and waved his hand. Galanor didn't linger and left right away to deliver his instructions to the troops. At this moment, Alaric's horse emitted a pained sound. "It seems like you were hurt too." He stroked the creature's back before he jumped off. Upon closer inspection, he found out that his horse had arrows stuck in its body. "You poor creature." Alaric beckoned to a warrior and told him to bring his horse to a healer. After the warrior left with his horse, Alaric went to find the newbies who had participated in the battle. He couldn't see them earlier due to the chaotic situation. Soon, he found them gathered together, forming a circle as they watched the corpses of their friends. Alaric was relieved to see Rasmus and the others, but when he saw the dead bodies of some young warriors, he felt a wave of sorrow. "Your Highness!" Rasmus was the first to notice him. The other young warriors immediately greeted him, their eyes filled with grief. "Your Highness!" Alaric walked towards them and placed his hand on Rasmus's shoulder. "I'm glad that you guys survived. Remember this, war is cruel and it could be any of you dying next. The next time you decide to join, think again." The newbies were silent for a moment. "No matter how dangerous it will be, I will still follow you into battle, Your Highness. I'm ready to sacrifice my life to help you achieve your goals." Aaliyah broke the silence, her words filled with determination. Alaric looked at her. She had new wounds on her body. Even her face had a small cut. She was no longer the helpless servant who once fell victim to Liam's horrid actions. She had become a reliable warrior and comrade. Alaric was proud of her growth. "You have become a great warrior, Aaliyah." Chapter 469. Halona's Strong Resistance. The stern-faced Aaliyah almost broke into tears when she heard this. Ever since Alaric saved her from that secret basement event, she had devoted herself to becoming a strong warrior, all for the sake of repaying him. She faced numerous challenges, but she persevered and kept going. Hearing his words made her feel that all her efforts weren't in vain. "I'm still far from my goal, but I will work harder so I can stand proudly by your Highness's side," she responded emotionally. Alaric smiled faintly. "I eagerly await that day." He spoke with the newbies and offered words of comfort to make sure that they wouldn't be mentally affected by what they had experienced in this war. After exchanging words with them, he went to find Ignatius. His victory against the enemy Venerable was a great help in their success. If he had lost the battle, everything would have been meaningless. A moment later, he found the Venerable receiving treatment from a healer. He had some minor wounds, so he needed to be patched up to heal faster. "Your Highness, I heard from the others that your house Silversword did great in this battle." Ignatius gestured for him to sit down on the wooden stool in front of him. "We just followed everything we had planned." Alaric humbly responded with a chuckle. The two expressed their joy about the victory and also their sorrow for the losses. "We have defeated most of Midgard's troops, but there should be some left in the city." Ignatius's expression became solemn when he mentioned this. Alaric nodded in agreement. "Once everyone has rested, I will bring those who still have the energy to fight to take control of the city. You can leave this to me, my lord." Ignatius initially intended to help them secure the city, but since Alaric volunteered for the task, he quickly agreed. "All right, Midgard's remaining troops aren't a threat to us anymore. You just need to be careful about the aristocrats and martial houses," he reminded. "Thank you for the reminder, my lord. I will keep it in mind." Alaric made a fist-palm gesture. In the next few hours, the Estanian troops dealt with the aftermath. Meanwhile, in Halona, the city was currently under siege. Its main gates were blocked off by Estanian troops, preventing anyone from leaving. Halona's military forces were divided into 4 groups, each one carrying around 50,000 warriors. At this moment, the Crown Prince of Estania, Leonard Exler, was observing the siege with an unchanging expression. Who would have thought that Halona is actually hiding such powerful military forces? The reports we got from our spies were unreliable. An aged voice echoed from his side. It's understandable. Halona's officials are more strict in handling the city's governance. They are more prudent than the other city officials among our target cities. Our spies couldn't infiltrate the highest levels, so they could only get information about low-level matters. The Crown Prince shook his head. This was the reason he specifically chose to join the siege on Halona. He felt that this city would be their most difficult obstacle. That's true. Our troops have been fighting them for 2 days, but their forces aren't showing signs of weakness. If this continues, we will run out of supplies. The old Marquis Tyrone expressed his worries. A few days ago, they were certain of their victory, but Halona wasn't as weak as they had thought. Other than its formidable military presence, there was also one major factor that made the city almost impregnable. It was the presence of Leroy Derova, a 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster. This guy had the ability to communicate well with beasts. With this unique ability, he managed to form a bond with a catastrophe-grade beast, the mountain golem. Leroy on his own was already powerful, but the mountain golem was even more impressive. It could freely manipulate the surrounding terrain in its 1 kilometer radius. Moreover, it possessed a physical body harder than many metals, making it impenetrable even with mana cannons. Lucas and Dominic had already joined hands to battle with this beast, but their joint efforts proved to be meaningless. Leonard remained composed. He let out a light smile and replied in a meaningful tone. The mountain golem is indeed formidable, but it cannot protect the whole city on its own. With our 2 venerables keeping it in check, the other parts of the city are vulnerable to our siege. As for our resources, we still have enough to supply our troops for an entire month. Tyrone turned silent at his words. He didn't know where the Crown Prince's confidence had come from. Although he was curious, he didn't dare inquire further. Knowing him, the Crown Prince would never boast about something he was unsure of. Leonard placed his hand on the old Marquis's shoulder and told him, "Just wait a few more days, Lord Tyrone." Tyrone could only smile wryly in response. He trusted the Crown Prince, but he still couldn't himself from worrying. Leonard looked away from the old Marquis and put his attention back to the battle. The special squad I sent should have already infiltrated the city by now. We just need to wait for them to open the gates from the inside, he thought to himself. He had full confidence in this special squad since he had trained them for many years. They specialized in infiltration and subterfuge. The individual battle prowess of each member was also at the top level. With their skills, it was just a matter of when they could complete their task. While he was immersed in his thoughts, a military officer suddenly walked towards them with heavy strides. Seeing this man, Tyrone immediately stopped him from walking closer to the Crown Prince. "State your business, Troy Azrahan," Tyrone spoke coldly. Troy Azrahan was already in his late 40s, but he looked like he was only in his late 20s. The reason for this was his high attainment as a warrior. He was the current rank 9 in the Estanian Dragon leaderboard. Chapter 470. The Mountain Golem. Troy Azrahan didn't come alone. He brought 2 warriors with him who were also transcendent knights. The atmosphere was tense and it looked like it would explode at any moment. Facing the old Marquis, Troy furrowed his eyebrows. "I would like to speak with His Highness." Tyrone was about to say something when Leonard patted his shoulder. "Please step aside, Lord Tyrone. I want to hear what Lord Troy has to say." Hearing this, Tyrone took a step back, but he kept his eyes on the trio. Leonard turned his head and smiled faintly. "You can speak freely, Lord Troy." This guy had spoken with him yesterday and expressed his disapproval about the decision to send the war prisoners as cannon fodder. He said that the surrendered enemies shouldn't be mistreated. Troy had even quarreled with Tyrone over this matter, but Leonard still didn't budge even with his strong persuasion. Troy cleared his throat before he spoke with a heavy tone. "Your Highness, we cannot continue with this inhuman behavior anymore. They may be enemies, but they were only forced by their foolish leaders. We must stop this madness at once. Troy came from House Azrahan, who were known for their chivalry and strict discipline. His father, the former lord of House Azrahan, came from a humble background, so he taught his children to respect everyone regardless of their status. Troy followed his father's footsteps, and even the members of House Azrahan were indoctrinated with this belief. Laenard patiently listened with a calm expression. "I understand your frustrations, Lord Troy, but we are at war." He shook his head, his tone becoming increasingly serious. "Sending those people would prevent us from losing our own troops. Do you want me to send our warriors instead?" Troy frowned, but he couldn't give up just yet. "Your Highness, I didn't say that. We can think of a better plan. We don't need to send those people to their deaths." Laenard sighed and shook his head. "We don't have much time to come up with a better plan. If we continue to dawdle, Harun will only send reinforcements. If that happens, more of our troops will die." He stared deeply at the other and said, "Lord Troy, if you do not wish to participate in this battle, then you are free to leave. My actions might be evil in your eyes, but I don't mind becoming a devil as long as I can minimize our casualties. If you have nothing else to say, please leave. I don't want to hear any more of this." Laenard waved his hand dismissively. Troy revealed a look of disappointment. He let out a deep sigh and lowered his head. "I apologize for disturbing your Highness." After apologizing, he turned around and left with his subordinates. Tyrone, who was observing the whole situation, furrowed his eyebrows and expressed his inner thoughts. House Azrahan is one of the most powerful neutral houses in the central region. It might not do you good to confront them, your Highness. I know. They are too principled and difficult to control. I already expected this kind of response from him when I decided to send those war prisoners as cannon fodder. Just leave them be. Laenard wasn't too worried about them. House Azrahan was loyal to the Emperor, so he knew that they would never betray them. Tyrone no longer said anything when he noticed the slight annoyance in the Crown Prince's voice. "My lord, what should we do?" "His Highness has already made up his mind, and I don't think he can still be persuaded." Troy shook his head with a helpless look. "We tried our best. There is nothing more we can do. Besides, His Highness is right. We are pressed for time, and Harun might send reinforcements at any moment. Although it disheartens me, we can only follow His Highness' commands." Hearing their lord's words, they could only accept it reluctantly. Troy stopped in his tracks, brought his palms together, and prayed solemnly. "Aru, please forgive His Highness's actions. I can feel that he is not an evil man. He is only forced to make this decision as the Crown Prince of Estania. As for the poor men who were killed because of his decisions, please guide them into your divine kingdom and give their souls the peace they deserve." Beyond the eastern gates of Halona, an intense battle was raging between the city's military forces and the invading Estanian troops. One could see a towering figure defending the gates with its own body. It was the mountain golem. It stood at a height of 40 meters, which was even taller than the city walls. At this moment, this towering beast was being bombarded with artillery fire from mana cannons and large boulders from the trebuchets. "My lord, we are running out of beast soul crystals and ballista arrows. What are your orders?" An urgent report was delivered by the artillery unit. Dominic's expression darkened upon hearing this. "Inform the artillery unit to temporarily stop firing the mana cannons and ballistas while we procure more supplies from the main army," he instructed. The messenger bowed his head to acknowledge the command. "I will deliver your words to them, my lord. You may leave." Dominic dismissed him. After the messenger left, Dominic turned his head to Lucas. "What do you think, Lucas? They have been fighting the mountain golem for 2 days, but it showed no signs of exhaustion. It continued to defend the eastern gates and prevented the Estanian troops from advancing. The mountain golem might be powerful, but it is still a living creature. It has already taken some damage from our artillery, so it should reveal a flaw soon." Lucas had been observing the monster for a while, and he noticed that a significant part of its outer armor was broken. He believed that it would likely reveal its weakness if it received more damage. "We cannot let it regenerate. Otherwise, all those efforts would be for naught. While saying this, he unsheathed his sword. I will make sure that it won't be able to heal itself. Chapter 471. Lucas fights the mountain golem. Are you planning to fight it by yourself? Dominic frowned. The mountain golem's body was too hard for their weapons to penetrate. Even the repeated bombardment of mana cannons only left minor damage to its outer armor. You've seen it yourself, Lucas. Our weapons don't work on that thing. Lucas kept his eyes on the towering monster as he replied. I know, but we might not have this chance again. We have run out of beast soul crystals, so we can no longer use our mana cannons. Even the ballista arrows we brought are also depleted. If we don't do something now, the beast will only regenerate itself. Lucas turned his head and stared deeply at Dominic. Lord Dominic, while I am fighting with the mountain golem, keep an eye on Leroy Durova. After saying this, Lucas jumped onto his horse and squeezed his legs while shouting. Hiya! The warhorse kicked off its hooves and galloped with quick strides. Dominic watched him leave with a faint smile. He still has his flair from his younger days. He then moved his eyes towards the city walls where dozens of figures could be seen. With his powerful vision, he could see them clearly as if they were in front of him. Among the people atop the city walls was a stalwart middle-aged man with a bushy beard. He had a broadsword that was almost as tall as him strapped on his back. This person was Leroy Durova, the four-ringed beast soul grandmaster and the master of the mountain golem. As if sensing his gaze, Leroy let out a mocking smile. Seeing this, Dominic snorted and quickly looked away. Arrogant bastard! Let's see if you can still give me that look once your mountain golem has been taken down. He muttered with annoyance. While he was cursing Leroy, Lucas had already stepped into battle. He maneuvered his horse to evade the enemy arrows as he urged it to rush towards the mountain golem. Sue! 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 Dozens of arrows whistled past him. As for those that he couldn't evade, he swung his sword to destroy them. Whoosh! At this moment, the mountain golem had already sensed his presence. It struck the ground with its fists, causing a devastating earthquake that shook the lands. Bang! Cracks appeared on the ground, making the road uneven and difficult to navigate. Lucas grabbed the reins with his left hand while holding his sword with the other. He expertly controlled which direction the horse would take, and he also perfectly timed when it would jump. Hiya! With his excellent control, they managed to get closer to the towering beast without taking any damage. Just a little bit more. Lucas imbued mana into his sword, preparing to attack the mountain golem. However, the beast suddenly grabbed the ground and tore a huge chunk of stone. Roar! With a roar, it threw the boulder at the approaching Lucas. It was so fast that there was no time to evade. Left with no choice, Lucas swung his sword and released a strike powered by his mana. Whoosh! The force behind his sword sliced the huge boulder in half. Roar! The mountain golem seemed to be enraged after failing to stop him. It tore another boulder from the ground and threw it at him with terrifying force. Whoosh! Lucas wasn't flustered. He imbued mana into his sword and cut down the boulder with a single slash. Bang! The beast was about to throw another boulder, but then Lucas suddenly jumped off his horse and leaped into the air. It's my turn, you damned beast! He shouted as he released a slash that contained a huge chunk of his mana. Whoosh! His strike summoned a fearsome tornado that heavily struck the mountain golem. Roar! The sharp winds tore a significant portion of the beast's strong external armor, revealing a layer of muscle underneath. So you are not entirely made of rocks, huh? Lucas didn't stop when he saw this. He repositioned himself to deliver another strike, but before he could swing his sword, the golem abruptly threw a punch that caused the air to violently fluctuate. Bang! Lucas evaded by a hair's breadth. It was quick for a beast of its size. With that punch, the golem created a huge hole in the ground. One punch from it and I will be left half dead. Sue! 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 Hundreds of arrows rained down from above, forcing Lucas to jump away by a few meters. He lifted his head and saw Helona's archers aiming at him. He clicked his tongue. How annoying! Dominic, who was observing the situation, immediately gave a command. Send our shield bearers and archers forward. Cover Lord Lucas and don't let the enemies attack him. The Estanian troops quickly reacted upon hearing his commands. 3,000 shield bearers charged with their shields raised diagonally above them. Following closely behind them were 10,000 archers knocking their arrows while aiming at the troops above the walls. In the next moment, thousands of arrows were fired from both sides. Sue! 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 Now that the enemy archers were occupied, Lucas no longer delayed. He released a series of attacks on the golem, tearing off more pieces of its external armor. Roar! The mountain golem was furious. It slammed its huge hands into the ground and used its ability to manipulate the surroundings. Sharp spikes suddenly protruded from the ground and targeted Lucas, who was advancing towards the golem. With a snort, Lucas swung his sword left and right, destroying the sharp spikes. Bang! Bang! After dealing with the sharp spikes, he leaped into the air and delivered a combination of slashes that carried tremendous force. Whoosh! 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 The golem was too big to evade his attacks, so it could only use its arms to protect its head. Bang! 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 Large chunks of its external armor were destroyed, revealing more of its muscles. With another slash, Lucas's sword finally penetrated its flesh. Blood spurted out from the wound, and the pain made the golem thrash around uncontrollably. The maddened golem razed the whole area to the ground. In just a few minutes, it turned the surroundings into a giant mess. Lucas also had to distance himself to avoid its wrath. When the beast regained clarity, it looked around in search of him, its bloodshot eyes boiling with rage. When it saw Lucas hiding not far away, it stomped its foot and pounced at him. With each stride, it left a deep imprint on the ground. A beast is always a beast. Now that it had revealed its weakness, Lucas prepared for his next move. He stimulated his energy core, unleashing more mana to power up his sword. The energy he gathered was so intense that his relic-level sword almost cracked. Could barely contain the ferocious mana he released. In the next moment, he roared while swinging his sword. His slash was so powerful that it summoned a fearsome tornado that was bigger than the golem. The tornado struck the charging beast, tearing its body apart with its sharp, blade-like winds. The golem used its mana to summon another layer of armor to defend itself, but the armor it produced quickly broke apart. Roar! Just as the beast was about to take some serious damage, a figure suddenly descended from the sky and interrupted Lucas's attack. Whoosh! Your life is mine, Lucas Silversword. A furious roar echoed above the sky. Lucas was about to defend himself, but another figure appeared next to him. Leave this to me. Right after he heard those words, Dominic blocked the incoming attack. Clang! A fearsome shockwave erupted as the two venerables clashed. Dominic! Get out of my way! Shouted Leroy, his face contorting with fury. Make me! Dominic sneered derisively. Hearing his response, Leroy brandished his broadsword in a wild manner. Each strike of his produced sparks of lightning that webbed through the air. How troublesome! Dominic released a flurry of slashes to deflect the bolts of lightning. Boom! 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 A series of explosions followed, as if dozens of fireworks had been lit up simultaneously. While the two venerables were occupied, Lucas moved his attention back to the golem. The beast was now covered in blood. Most of its external armor had been destroyed, exposing its muscular body. Sensing his gaze, the golem glared at him and opened its gaping mouth, emitting a sound that resembled booming thunder. Rah! Lucas felt his ears splitting from its earth-shattering voice, but he ignored the pain and let loose his remaining mana for one final strike. The golem seemed to have sensed his intentions. It roared at him and charged with heavy strides. Upon gathering momentum, the golem swung its fist at him. Whoosh! Just as its punch was about to hit him, he brandished his sword with overwhelming might. His sword sliced through the golem's fist, penetrating deeply into its flesh and tearing its bones and muscles apart. Chapter 472. Persuading Leroy. After destroying the beast's arm, Lucas's sword continued straight to its head. KHSHK. Like an exploding watermelon, its head burst into a red mist. Lucas watched as the towering mountain golem's headless corpse fell to the ground with a heavy thud. That took us longer. If we hadn't brought all those mana cannons, trebuchets, and ballistas, killing this beast would have been impossible. They had deployed most of the artillery weapons the Estanian army had brought in this expedition. To destroy the external armor of the golem, they had almost used up the entire army's ammunition and resources. Now all that's left is that guy. Thinking about this, he turned his head and looked at the ongoing battle between Dominic and Leroy. He could feel the shockwaves and the tremors of the ground caused by the two venerables' battle. It was no longer a fight between humans. Their destructive power had already exceeded that of a mortal. One could say that they were monsters in human form. At this moment, Dominic was dominating the battle with his higher physical attributes. Coupled with his skills and combat abilities, even the famed Leroy couldn't land a direct hit on him. "I should help out so we can end this quickly," Lucas mumbled. When he took a step, Dominic seemed to have sensed his intentions. The latter raised his hand and stopped him with a stern voice. "Lucas, you don't need to help me. I can handle this guy. Besides, you need to get some rest. You must have expended a lot of mana fighting that monster." Hearing this, Lucas stopped in his tracks. Dominic was right. He had indeed used most of his mana in that fight with the golem. After some thought, he responded with a deep look. "All right, but if this battle drags on for too long, then I will intervene." Dominic grinned at his words. When did he learn to act cool? "You don't have to worry, Lucas. Before you even become a venerable, I have been at this stage for decades. I fought countless experts and defended Estania from many powerful foes. I am Dominic." A terrifying surge of power suddenly burst forth from Dominic. He raised his halberd and swung it down with tremendous force. Whoosh! A thunderous sound akin to a lion's roar echoed as his halberd cut through the air. Facing his attack, Leroy didn't cower. He lifted his broadsword and imbued it with mana to clash with Dominic's halberd. In the next moment, a deafening explosion rocked the area. Boom! It was so loud that everyone was forced to cover their ears. When the dust settled, everyone saw two figures standing motionless, staring at each other with cold gazes. Dominic appeared to be unharmed, but those with strong perception could see that his hands were bleeding. On the other hand, Leroy was in a much worse situation. His right arm was hanging loosely, clearly dislocated after taking on that attack. "Dominic, why go this far? We hadn't taken any of your land. There should still be room for negotiations." Leroy spoke as he quietly used a healing trait to heal his broken arm. "Damn it, I thought I could take on that move, but it seems like Dominic has become more powerful since the last time we met. I need to buy as much time until my arm recovers." Leroy thought to himself. "It's all because of that bastard, Lemuel. If only I hadn't listened to his nonsense, I wouldn't have been involved with this bullshit." While he was inwardly cursing Lemuel, Dominic flashed him a cold smile. "Leroy, what have you been doing all these years? To think that someone like you would resort to cheap tactics like this. You weren't this weak before." Veins protruded on Leroy's face upon hearing his mocking remarks. He had never felt this humiliated before, but he held it in. His dominant arm was broken, so it was dangerous for him to fight Dominic. With a forced smile, he responded, "Dominic, don't be like this. There is no need for us to fight to the death. You should know that we are only following orders. Continuing this battle would only result in more casualties between both sides. Why don't we talk this out? I guarantee that I will speak with the imperial family of Harun to give Estania a proper explanation and compensation. What do you say? I can't beat two mythical knights on my own. I need to negotiate with them even if it means lowering my head." He was scared of death. He just realized it now. He didn't want to lose everything that he had worked so hard for. "No, I must not die here. Who cares about saving face? Being humiliated is better than getting myself killed." Unlike most nobles who had inherited their titles from their ancestors, Leroy got his position all by himself. He was just a commoner who didn't hesitate to use every means necessary to claw his way to the top. Dominic revealed a thoughtful look. He then let out a chuckle and said, "Leroy, are you really that afraid of death? If you don't want to die here, tell your subordinates to surrender and have them open the gates." Leroy's face fell at his words. "You want me to surrender?" If he surrendered here, he would be branded as a weakling and a traitor. "What are you hesitating for? Your golem is already dead and you will have to face 2 mythical knights. Wouldn't it be better for you to surrender?" Dominic tried to pressure him. Leroy was silent for a moment. "He wants me, Leroy Durova, to surrender? Hold on. I just thought of a much better idea." Dominic's voice drifted into his ears. Leroy raised an eyebrow. With a faint smile, Dominic said, "How about changing sides? If you swear fealty to Estania, we will welcome your entire family with open arms. You will face no discrimination and I will make it so that you will receive the respect that a venerable deserves." Chapter 473, Leroy's Trump Card. Leroy's face darkened and his aura leaked out controllably. "Are you mocking me?" he roared. Dominic shook his head. "Don't misunderstand me. I'm just giving you an option. You are a smart man. I'm sure you understand what I mean." Leroy took a deep breath to contain his rage. "He is forcing me to take their side. Damn cunning old bastard." He thought that he could negotiate with them, but Dominic was a lot smarter than he looked. "Leroy, you built House Durova from scratch. Do you want to see it get destroyed just for the stupid mistake of Haroun's crown prince? Think about it carefully before you open your mouth." Dominic reminded with a cold look. Leroy fell into silence. After an entire minute, he stared deeply at Dominic and asked in a low voice, "Can you guarantee the safety of my entire family?" He had seen it for himself. Estania was no longer the weak nation that it was decades ago. They had a new mythical knight on their side, and he even heard that House Silversword also had a catastrophe-grade beast. Estania might be stronger than Haroun now. There is no use in being stubborn here. That would only get me killed. Loyalty? Who cares about that? Only those old shitheads are stupid enough to give their loyalty to this corrupted nation. Dominic lowered his halberd and replied with a chuckle. "How about we discuss this amicably?" With a defeated sigh, Leroy nodded his head. "Fine. I hope you are not lying to me. If I go crazy, I don't know what kind of shit I might do. I'm not sure if you know, but a mountain golem's weakness isn't its head." Hearing this, Dominic furrowed his eyebrows. "What do you mean?" With a mysterious smile, Leroy shook his head. "Did you really think that the mountain golem would die so easily?" Suddenly, the headless mountain golem lifted itself. One could see that it was slowly regenerating its broken limb and its head. "What? Is this monster unkillable?" Lucas, who was the nearest to the golem, was stunned when he saw the monster rising from death. Even Dominic was surprised. They had information on the mountain golem, but there was no report that it could regenerate a lost head. "So you still had this ace up your sleeve?" Dominic narrowed his eyes into slits. Leroy felt much better when he saw Dominic's expression. "You see, my path to the top wasn't an easy one. You don't know what kind of tribulations I faced just to get to where I am now." He sheathed his broadsword and turned around as he spoke. "Dominic, we have much to talk about." Looking at Leroy's back, Dominic felt that he had made a mistake negotiating with him. He felt regretful, but the arrow had already been shot, so he could only see it through the end. "I hope I made the right choice." With a soft sigh, he sent Lucas a knowing look. Sensing his gaze, Lucas nodded. "Let's take it slow. This might end well for us." Meanwhile, on the Crown Prince's side, a messenger came to give his report. "Your Highness, I bring a message from the 2 venerables." Leonard beckoned to the messenger. The messenger walked towards him, but someone appeared in front of him, preventing him from getting closer to the Crown Prince. The messenger nervously lifted his head and realized that it was Tyrone, the old Marquis. "Give it to me," Tyrone spoke. The messenger hesitated and sent the Crown Prince a look. Leonard nodded in assent. Seeing this, the messenger immediately handed the letter to the old Marquis. Tyrone took the letter and inspected it carefully before giving it to Laynard. You didn't need to scare him like that, Lord Tyrone. Laynard smiled helplessly. The old Marquis bowed his head and explained himself. I apologize, Your Highness. We can't be certain if there are still spies hidden among our ranks, so we need to be careful. After Stephen's betrayal, Tyrone had become more cautious. Laynard couldn't blame him, so he just responded with a smile. You may leave. He dismissed the messenger before he opened the letter. Upon reading the contents, he revealed an unusual expression. Interesting. No wonder he managed to reach his position without anyone's support. Tyrone was confused by his words, so he asked, what happened on their side? Laynard burned the letter and replied with a thoughtful smile. Well, I wonder. Lord Tyrone, taking over Helona might be easy after all. Ha! Black lines appeared on Tyrone's forehead. He asked the Crown Prince to explain, but Laynard only laughed and told him to wait and see. Although frustrated by his response, Tyrone could only hold back his curiosity. The troops led by Ignatius headed straight to Midgard after decimating Rudner's army. When they reached the city, they faced resistance from the remaining enemy soldiers. Most of Midgard's troops might have perished, but there were still tens of thousands left to defend the city. Moreover, most of these troops were from the city's noble and martial houses. Looking at the shut gates, Giovanni clicked his tongue in annoyance. They just won't give up. Why struggle when the outcome is still the same? He felt that they were struggling meaninglessly, but Alaric had a different opinion. They are only trying to defend their land from invaders. To them, we are the enemies. They are risking their lives for the sake of the people inside the city. Let me go and talk to them. Alaric stepped forward. Our soldiers are still exhausted from the last battle. If we send them to fight, it would only add to our casualties. Giovanni furrowed his eyebrows. Will they even listen? Just look at them. I don't think they will let you walk inside their city unharmed. He pointed at the soldiers atop the walls who were eyeing them with furious faces. Giovanni is right, Alaric. You don't need to place yourself in danger. Ignatius was also against his decision. Chapter 474. Negotiating with General Marlin. Our soldiers are not in their peak condition. Alaric shook his head. How many more of our men will perish if we choose to attack a city full of furious warriors? I have already made up my mind. Besides, I am confident that I can retreat safely if something goes wrong. Please trust me on this. Hearing this, Giovanni and Ignatius fell into deep thought. Like Alaric had said, most of their warriors were injured from the last battle. Knowing you, I'm pretty sure you won't listen to my advice. Giovanni helplessly shook his head. Then I will follow you inside. Ignatius suddenly spoke. Alaric shook his head. No. If you follow me, Giovanni will be left alone to lead the army. He might do something rash if there is no one around to stop him. My lord, please stay here. The army needs you. If you suddenly disappear, our troops might feel uneasy. Ignatius stared deeply at him and said, Then you must bring some people with you. Alaric nodded with a faint smile. I will bring a few of my subordinates. With them by my side, even if there are thousands of enemies before us, I am confident that we can escape. All right, but remember, your safety is the top priority. If you feel that things are going awry, you must retreat immediately. Ignatius reminded him. Yes, my lord. Alaric did a fist-palm salute. After bidding them farewell, Alaric went to gather his subordinates. For this task, he would only bring the most powerful warriors of House Silversword. Bringing more with him would only make the enemy troops feel wary, and it might negatively impact the negotiations. 30 minutes later, a small group of men gathered before him. I gathered you all here to inform you about our next task. Alaric paused and scanned their faces one by one. These men were the top powerhouses of House Silversword. Galliner, Sekus, Fredrin, Butch, Azazel, and Warwick. 6 transcendent knights who were ranked at the top of the Estanian Dragon leaderboard. Taking these 6 should be enough. I will leave Einar and the others here to lead our troops. There were still more transcendent knights in the household, but if he took them all, House Silversword's troops would be left leaderless. Alaric cleared his throat and opened his mouth. We will enter the city and try to negotiate with their leaders. Once inside, we must refrain from using force unless absolutely necessary. There will be people who will badmouth us, but you must be patient and... He gave them a few reminders to make sure that everything would go smoothly. Inform your subordinates that you will be leaving and you must be back within 15 minutes. Now go. After sending them off, Alaric made his preparations. He brought a few hidden weapons and some elixirs. He also brought some dried meat for emergencies. That should be it. He double-checked his equipment before heading back to the meetup location. By the time he arrived, everyone was already there, fully geared up. Looking at their faces, Alaric said in a deep voice, "Let's go." Soon, the group left the camp and headed straight towards the city gates. As they got closer, they could feel the warriors atop the walls tensing up. They aimed their arrows at them, looking like they were ready to shoot. Alaric gestured with his hand and instructed Fredrin, "Give them the signal." The guy was responsible for holding a white flag which signified their request for peaceful negotiations. It was also a symbol to inform the enemies not to attack. Fredrin raised the flag and waved it back and forth. The warriors atop Midgard's walls frowned when they saw the signal. There was a heated discussion between them. They were far so Alaric's group couldn't hear what they were saying. But one thing was certain. Midgard's troops were divided. "Your Highness, will they let us in? I think those people will shoot us down if we step into their range," Warwick asked with a concerned look. "There should be some smart people up there. If they want to live, they will come down to speak with us," Alaric calmly replied. Half an hour later, a group composed of 10 cavalrymen stepped out of the main gate. Alaric used his appraisal on them and found out that they were transcendent knights. Did they intentionally send these men to tell us that they still have the strength to fight? Although they were transcendents, they were still far weaker compared to the 6 men he brought. However, there was one of them who stood out from the rest. It was a bald and brown-skinned middle-aged man with a big scar on top of his head. One could see the stitches on his scalp which had already healed for some time. Because of his hideous scar, he looked rather intimidating. That man's attributes are a bit higher than Sir Warwick's. He is dangerous. While he was assessing them, the other group was also observing their party. "General Marlin, can we really trust those men? What if they suddenly attack us once we get closer? Is that a demonkin? Why would a demonkin willingly follow them? General, those Estanian bastards killed our warriors. I can't forgive them. If they make one foolish move, my sword will cut them apart." The middle-aged man with the scar on his head raised his hand, signaling to his men to keep quiet. They raised the flag. "It means that they want to negotiate." Marlin spoke with a deep frown. "With the size of their army, our troops wouldn't be able to defend the city. We must seize this chance for the sake of our people." His words silenced his companions. As they neared Alaric's group, their tension intensified. Some of them even grabbed the handle of their weapons, prepared to take action if something went wrong. When they were only 100 meters apart, Marlin raised his fist, signaling his men to stop. He then looked at Alaric's group and shouted, "I am Marlin Thorn, the commander of Midgard's city defense troops." With his introduction, the tense atmosphere seemed to have eased up. Alaric lightly squeezed his legs to make his horse move forward by a couple of steps. He then did a fistpalm salute to greet the other party. "I am Warwick, the leader of this small group." He didn't give his real name since he might be targeted if he were to reveal it. His subordinates had already been briefed about this, so they didn't react when he announced his fake introduction. "We came here in hopes of speaking with your leaders. As you can see, I only brought 6 men with me to show our sincerity." Hearing this, Marlin and his subordinates furrowed their eyebrows. "If you want to negotiate, then you can speak your terms with me. I have enough authority to make a decision for the city." Marlin responded, "In that case, can we discuss this more comfortably? It's rather exhausting to shout all the time." Alaric's words made Marlin's subordinates feel nervous. No problem. Unlike his subordinates, Marlin remained calm. He jumped off his horse and gestured for his men to do the same. Seeing this, Alaric's group also jumped off their horses. In the next moment, the two groups slowly walked towards each other. There was a slight tension in the air as the members of each group warily glanced at the other. 70 meters, 50 meters, 20 meters. Soon, both groups stood just a few meters apart. They could clearly see each other's faces. These men are formidable warriors. Marlin could sense it clearly now that they were this close to Alaric's group. He could sense the strong fluctuations of mana around them. They weren't even intentionally releasing their mana. Just their terrifying aura alone was enough to intimidate him. General Marlin, I'm pleased to meet you. Likewise. Alaric and Marlin exchanged simple greetings. I won't beat around the bush. I hope that Midgard will surrender. Alaric spoke without hesitation. Marlin's subordinates were furious when they heard this. How arrogant of you! Do you think we are afraid to fight you? The bottled-up emotions were released, but Alaric's group remained unmoved. Enough! Marlin shouted authoritatively. They were at a disadvantage, so he chose to hold back his fury. After silencing his men, he stared deeply at Alaric and replied, You look younger than me, so I will call you by your name. Warwick, why should we surrender to you? We still have tens of thousands of brave warriors prepared to sacrifice their lives. Alaric let out a deep breath before he responded. Is there really a need to fight? General Marlin, there is no need for more bloodshed. Our goal here is only to force Haroun's imperial family to listen to our demands. We have no intentions of killing the innocent people. If you cooperate with us, we will ensure your people's safety. Chapter 475, Compromise. Marlin fell into deep silence. We only have a little more than 15,000 warriors left. If we include the volunteer forces, no, most of them are old men and youngsters who could barely hold a sword. If we fight Estania's army, it would be a disaster. His face darkened the more he thought about the situation. While he was hesitating, Alaric's stern voice drifted into his ears. General Marlin, we have hundreds of thousands of warriors who can fight, and the person leading us is also a venerable. Please think wisely. Hearing this, Marlin's face fell. He had received word that the venerable stationed in their city, Rudner, had fallen into battle. However, he didn't believe it. He thought that it was the work of Estania's people, intentionally spreading false rumors to make all of Midgard anxious. He didn't want to believe that Rudner had died. Is Lord Rudner truly dead? Marlin's heart sank at the bottom of the abyss. With a gloomy expression, he stared straight into Alaric's eyes and said, You must guarantee the safety of our people. General, this man might be lying. Don't fall for his tricks. One of his subordinates lashed out, looking completely agitated. Alaric's subordinates were about to grab their weapons when the former motioned at them to stay calm. The atmosphere was tense, and it looked like both groups would fight at any moment. I understand your fury, but our decision here will decide the fate of Midgard. Marlin suddenly spoke, his words breaking the tension. His subordinates lowered their heads, their faces filled with anger and indignation. With a deep sigh, Marlin turned his head back to Alaric. I accept your demands. I will inform the people of Midgard and have them surrender to you. However, his face suddenly turned cold as he continued. If you break your promise, we will take you guys to hell even if it kills us. A terrifying aura burst out from him. Humph! With a snort, Galliner released his own aura which overpowered Marlin's. Marlin's group was terrified. It felt as if a savage beast had locked its eyes on them. This person. At that moment, Marlin realized that he was nothing compared to the giant warrior behind Warwick. If we fight here, I won't last a single blow against this man. Stop scaring them. We are here to negotiate. Alaric sent Galliner a scolding look, but everyone could tell that it was just for show. So, Alaric smiled at Marlin. Do we have a deal, General Marlin? Marlin clenched his fists, struggling to hold back his rage. Gritting his teeth, he nodded with a grim look. We accept your terms. Excellent choice. Alaric beamed. You should head back and inform everyone about this, but don't make us wait for too long. The venerable leading us might not like it. You see, he is an impatient man. Alaric warned him. Marlin almost failed to hold back his rage, but he chose to lower his head for the sake of his people. Yes, I will have a word with everyone. Just give me 3 days. 1 day. You have 1 day. Alaric sent him a deep look. That's impossible. There are still people who dash. General Marlin, don't make me repeat myself. Alaric's voice suddenly turned cold and a chilling aura burst out from him. Is he this powerful? Marlin thought that Alaric wasn't that strong since he looked so young, but the aura leaking out from him was almost no weaker than the aura released by the big guy earlier. You understood. I will make it happen, Marlin responded, his face covered in thick beads of sweat. Good. I will wait for your good news. Alaric smiled faintly, turned around, and left with his group. Marlin stared at their retreating figures with a helpless expression. That arrogant bastard. General, do we really have to surrender to those people? We have already sent word to the imperial family. There should be reinforcements coming soon. We just need to hold on for a few to dash. That's enough, Marlin muttered in a reprimanding voice. You have seen it for yourself. Just those 6 people are strong enough to kill us all. Reinforcements? Did you really think that our letters would reach the capital? With a furious look, Marlin jumped onto his horse. Even if reinforcements are coming, we wouldn't last a single day against their army. Hearing his words, his subordinates could only gnash their teeth in anger. Somewhere in Helona, a heated discussion was happening between 3 venerables. What? You want a dukedom in exchange? Lucas almost drew his sword when he heard Leroy's demands. Stop giving me that look, Leroy snorted. Look here, Lucas. If you want me to betray my own nation, then you'd better make it worthwhile for me. Besides, Astania wouldn't lose out on this deal. Your nation will get a 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster who has full control of a catastrophe-grade monster. Not to mention the army under my house Durova. Veins protruded on Lucas's face, but he couldn't offer a retort. Suddenly, Dominic, who was silent the entire time, opened his mouth and spoke. All right, I will speak with His Majesty about this. Lucas stared at him and raised an eyebrow. It didn't sit well with him to give such a high position to someone from another nation. I like this guy. He knows what he's doing. Leroy grinned and gave Dominic a thumbs up. Don't be happy just yet. Dominic shook his head. I only said that I will speak with His Majesty about your demands. The final decision is in His Majesty's hands, he clarified in a grim tone. Leroy furrowed his eyebrows, but his face soon relaxed. Fine. I don't trust you guys, so we'd better sign an official agreement, and I'm sure you need it too. Dominic nodded. No problem. I will call someone to write the official agreement. All 3 of us here must sign it. Are there any objections? Chapter 476. 2 Old Foxes. Dominic summoned a literate warrior to write the official agreement. This was an important document, so he chose someone trustworthy. My lords, I have written everything according to the terms you have stipulated. It just needs the stamp between both parties. The warrior nervously handed the written document to Dominic. He was just a low-ranking warrior, so he was afraid that he would be killed to keep the information from leaking. Noticing his anxiety, Dominic placed his hand on the man's shoulder. Don't be nervous. As long as you keep your mouth shut, nothing will happen to you. Hearing this, the warrior immediately lowered his head and solemnly promised. I assure you that no one will ever hear of this, my lord. Even if I am tortured, I will never disclose this information. Dominic chuckled at his response. Relax. You just need to keep quiet for a few months. Once things are set in place, this information will be revealed to the public. By then, you will have nothing to worry about anymore. Yes, my lord. All right. You may leave. Dominic dismissed him. The warrior didn't linger and left in haste. Here, put your stamp on it. A thumbprint is fine too. Dominic handed the document to Leroy. We will review it first. Leroy took the document and handed it to his trusted subordinate to be checked. Dominic shrugged. After some time, Leroy's subordinate didn't find anything unusual in the document. My lord, there is nothing wrong with the document. All right, your job here is done. You may go. Leroy dismissed the man before he stamped the document. Dominic carefully kept the signed agreement in his inner pocket. Now that our agreement has been officially established, let's proceed with the next step. Leroy's expression became serious all of a sudden. Let's hear it. Dominic let out a deep breath before he replied. As of the moment, Helona is still fiercely resisting our troops. I want you to try negotiating with the city officials and aristocrats to surrender. If Helona's troops surrendered, they would greatly minimize their losses. Leroy would also stand to gain a lot from this if he did his job well. Leroy squinted his eyes. So you were testing me, huh? If he could successfully make Helona willingly surrender, he would definitely earn the favor of Estania's imperial family. This would also increase the likelihood of his demands being accepted. Leave it to me. Just give me a few days. He smiled confidently. As a venerable, he had a huge network of friends who would willingly do his bidding. A few days? That's too vague. Give me an exact number. Dominic demanded. Leroy raised an eyebrow, but he didn't complain. He thought for a moment. Most of Helona is under my house Durova, but I might face some resistance from the loyal followers of the imperial family. Politics wasn't his strongest point. Despite his overwhelming martial power, his house Durova wasn't able to fully control Helona. Other than his household, there were also a few powerful aristocratic houses that had high authority in the city. The biggest issue was that these aristocratic and martial houses were loyal to the imperial family. After a long time of silence, he answered, 5. No, give me 3 days. That should be more than enough time to make everyone surrender. Dominic frowned. That's too long. You should know that we are still within enemy territory. There could be enemy reinforcements coming at any moment. Listen here, Dominic. I understand your point, but Helona's political situation is more complicated than you think. Leroy paused for a moment and shook his head. Unlike my house Durova, most of the aristocratic and martial houses in the city are inherited from the previous generations. This means that they are very loyal to the imperial family. Negotiating with those stubborn people will be extremely challenging. He explained. Dominic rubbed his chin in contemplation. It seems like your house Durova is in a tough spot. That is quite unexpected for a household helmed by a venerable. Leroy bitterly smiled. The imperial family is threatened by how fast my household has grown. They also don't like the fact that I came from a mixed descent. You see, I'm not a full Harunian. My mother. His words trailed off and it looked like he didn't want to continue with the topic. I understand. Just try your best. We will wait for your good news. Dominic didn't make things difficult for him. Their alliance was still fragile and it could break at any moment, so it was necessary to establish trust between both parties. This would be a good test to know if Leroy was serious about defecting to Estania. Leroy nodded. Don't worry. I will keep you guys updated. All right. I will send our people to follow you so we can keep track of your whereabouts. This way, exchanging messages will be easier. Leroy sneered inwardly. You just want to keep an eye on me. Do you think I'm an idiot? Although he didn't like it, Leroy could only agree. Both parties were still wary of each other since they still hadn't established enough trust. Fine by me. I will do the same. I'm sure you won't mind, right? Leroy smirked while sending him a knowing look. Dominic's face twitched, but he still managed to squeeze out a smile. Of course. Doing this will make it easier for us to send messages. I'm glad you understand. Leroy chuckled with a victorious expression. Looking at the two exchanging words back and forth, Lucas felt that he was watching two old foxes. I'm really not cut out for these things. It's a good thing that Dominic is here. Otherwise, I would only ruin things. He smiled wryly while shaking his head. While he was immersed in his thoughts, Dominic's voice drifted into his ears. That should be all for now. We will regroup with the others first and inform them about the situation. Just keep us updated. Sure thing, Leroy responded. The trio exchanged farewells before they went their separate ways. Chapter 477 Marlin speaks with the aristocrats of Midgard. Later that day, another letter was delivered to the Crown Prince. Your Highness, we received word from the Venerables. The messenger reported with a deep bow. Leonard smiled faintly. It seems like their conversation has concluded. He turned his head to Tyrone and sent him a knowing look. Understanding his intentions, Tyrone took the letter from the messenger and handed it to the Crown Prince. Here is the letter, Your Highness. Leonard took the letter and signaled to the messenger to leave. After the man left, he unsealed the letter and read it with a look of anticipation. A while later, he let out a chuckle. Who would have thought that things would turn out this way? He then looked at the confused Tyrone and explained the situation to him. So that's what happened. The old Marquis was surprised by the news. He now understood why the prince revealed an unusual expression when they received a letter recently. But can we really trust an enemy venerable? Sensing his doubtful look, Leonard spoke. Don't worry about it, Sir Tyrone. I am sure the two venerables have a strong reason why they chose to believe that man. He turned around and added, if this goes perfectly, we will gain another venerable on our side. You're right, Your Highness. I hope everything goes smoothly. Tyrone sighed inwardly. At this moment, in the city hall of Midgard, there was a heated argument between Marlin and a group of aristocrats. General, what were you thinking? Did you really tell those bastards that we will surrender? Are you out of your mind? Shouted a rotund, middle-aged man with neatly combed hair. He was so furious that his beard flared up. His shoulders were also trembling, which showed how agitated he was. General, those men might be planning to deceive us. If we surrender and open our gates to their army, they might kill us all. This time, the one who spoke was an old man dressed in shiny silk clothes. How about we wait for reinforcements? We just have to hold out for a few days. Marlin could no longer contain his anger when he heard their ridiculous words. Wait for a few days and what? Haven't you seen the size of their troops? Do you think we can defend the city against an army of that size? Are you guys dimwits? All you guys do is sit on your comfortable chairs, so you know absolutely nothing about warfare. Startled by his strong response, the aristocrats stared at him with dumbfounded gazes. Marlin was usually very accommodating to them, so they were shocked by his unexpected reaction. Looking at their stunned faces, Marlin took a deep breath and continued. They have a venerable leading their army, and they also have a large group of powerful warriors. Even with all the defensive weapons in the city, that army will besiege us in just a day. The only reason they are willing to negotiate with us is to minimize their losses. Everyone fell silent as they began to contemplate his words. I understand that you have properties to protect, but ensuring the safety of our people is more important. Please, give me your approval so Midgard can survive this crisis. Marlin bowed deeply, his voice ringing with emotion. The hall was silent for almost an entire minute before someone responded. Whatever happens will decide the fate of our city. I will give you my support this time, but I hope that you are right, General Marlin. Otherwise, I will be very disappointed. The first person to give his support was quite an influential figure. The nobles who had no intentions of giving their support began to reconsider their decisions. Marlin, you better be right about this. Another one expressed his support, albeit in a fierce manner. With two aristocrats voicing their support, a few more also followed. More than half of the influential people and aristocrats who were gathered in the hall had given their support, leaving only less than 20 people who remained undecided. Marlin looked at them and was about to persuade them when, if you are planning to persuade us into supporting your cowardly decision, then you'd better shut your mouth. I don't care about their numbers. I will never yield to those Estanian dogs, shouted the rotund, middle-aged man with undisguised fury. Staring at him deeply, Marlin furrowed his eyebrows. Viscount Peterson Shakewell, I knew you would be my greatest obstacle. Peterson Shakewell was one of the 3 most influential figures in Midgard. This was because he controlled the biggest mining industry in the city. With the success of his business, he managed to gain the favor of Harun's imperial family. Lord Peterson, please think about the lives of the people of Midgard. Marlin wanted to say something, but his words were rudely cut off. Did you not hear what I just said? Peterson shook his head with a cold look. I don't want to hear any of this bullshit. If you guys want to surrender, then go do it yourselves, you damned cowards. I am leaving. With an angry flick of his sleeves, he walked away with heavy strides. A few aristocrats who were undecided chose to leave with him, leaving only 4 people who were yet to make their decisions. Marlin glanced at Peterson's group who were about to exit the city hall and muttered under his breath, Peterson, if you try to get all of us killed, then you will have to die by my sword. While he was crafting a plan on how to quietly eliminate Peterson, a voice suddenly drifted into his ears. General Marlin, we need to discuss this properly. Things have already come to this point, so we have to do it right. Turning his head, Marlin nodded his head. What do you propose we should do? I want to hear the thoughts of you wise lords. Hearing this, everyone's faces eased up. Chapter 478. Betrayal. How certain are you that the Estanian army will not harm our people if we surrender to them? One of them suddenly asked. Everyone looked at Marlin when they heard this. Sensing their gazes, the general's expression turned serious as he replied. To tell you the truth, I cannot guarantee whether they are being truthful. However, I'm certain that our soldiers will be annihilated if we choose to fight them. They might even massacre the entire city out of anger. Everyone's faces turned grim upon hearing this. So you are saying that if we do not surrender, all of Midgard will most likely perish? Spoke an aristocrat in a questioning tone. Yes, Marlin nodded. If we surrender, there might be a chance for all of us to live. One of the aristocrats frowned and mumbled. So it all depends on what the Estanian troops will do. For things to go smoothly, we must make sure that there will be no accidents. Our first obstacle will be Lord Peterson. You all know what kind of man he is. That guy is greedy, but he is loyal to the imperial family. He will never lower his head to Estania. Everyone agreed with this. Looking at their worried faces, Marlin spoke. I will take care of Lord Peterson. I just need you all to keep his allies in check. I will handle the rest. The aristocrats were taken aback. Peterson Shakewell had a huge influence over the city's defense forces. If Marlin were to go head-to-head with him, he would face strong resistance. Very well, we will take care of his allies. The group discussed their plans for close to an hour before they ended their meeting. They then went their separate ways to do their respective tasks. Upon leaving the city hall, Marlin summoned his most trusted subordinates, his face looking grim. My brothers, we are heading to the estate of House Shakewell. Inform the troops that we will march at once. Yes, sir. Outside Midgard, the Estanian troops had built a temporary camp surrounded by tall logs used as walls. At this moment, Alaric had received news from Sigis's assassin unit about the ongoing situation inside the city. That Marlin guy is quite the decisive person, he remarked with a faint smile. Marlin had some decent attributes, so he had piqued his interest. He wondered if the guy could handle a big shot like Peterson Shakewell. Thinking about this, Alaric turned his head to Sigis. What do you think, Sigis? Do you think he can win against Peterson? Sigis's face remained serene with no emotional fluctuations in his eyes. Based on the information we have on hand, it will be a difficult battle for him. Oh? How so? Alaric raised an eyebrow. Peterson has a strong grip on Midgard's city defense forces. I believe some of them will betray Marlin. Sigis calmly responded. Alaric rubbed his chin with a look of anticipation. I only gave him a day. We should get our answers before midnight. When evening came, dark and gloomy clouds hovered above Midgard, as if to warn the residents about an imminent storm. In the inner ring of the city was a man-made hill where one could see the estate of House Shakewell standing imposingly. Beneath the hill, An army of over 10,000 warriors was gathered, surrounding the estate with cold gazes. "General, we don't have much time. If it rains, our troops will have a hard time climbing the hill." His subordinate's worried voice drifted into Marlin's ears. Hearing this, Marlin lifted his head to look at the cluster of dark clouds. "It's about time," he muttered. He then jumped onto his horse, unsheathed his sword, and raised it into the air. "Warriors of Midgard, tonight we will fight for the sake of our families. I know that this is a hard decision to make, but this is our only option to give everyone the chance to live." With a fierce look, he roared, "Charge!" Marlin kicked his horse's belly, urging it to charge forward. The city defense troops immediately followed when they heard his command. The loud, resonating cries of the warriors echoed across the hill, chilling the hearts of everyone in House Shakewell's estate. Thousands of warriors rushed up the hill with their weapons in hand. Just when they were about to reach the walls of the estate, arrows were suddenly shot into the sky. "Su! Su! Su!" Seeing this, Marlin lifted his shield above his head and shouted to his men, "Raise your shields!" The warriors of the city defense troops quickly raised their shields, but some of them still failed to react in time. When the arrows fell, hundreds of warriors were turned into sieves, killing them on the spot. Although most of the troops had survived, there were arrows stuck on their bodies which brought them immense pain. "How do they have so many arrows?" Marlin's face fell when he saw his troops dying one by one. Most of the arrows should have been allocated to the city defense troops, so how did they get their hands on so many arrows? Suddenly, a thought occurred to him, making his face turn unsightly. Did someone betray me? Numerous faces flashed in his mind. Why? I only want all of us to survive. Why betray me? He felt a wave of anguish at the thought of being betrayed by his subordinates. "General! General!" A loud shout echoed in his ears, disrupting his thoughts. Turning his head, he saw his young adjutant, who had 4 arrows stuck to his shoulders, staring at him with concern. "General, please focus on the battle. Are you all right?" Marlin's face fell when he saw the adjutant in this state. "Please don't worry about me, General. The troops are in disarray. We need to change formation." The adjutant responded, his face slowly turning pale. Marlin swallowed hard as he nodded his head. "Siege units, forward. We must destroy their walls in one push. Shield bearers, protect them. Archers, cover their backs." He shouted a series of commands. In case you didn't know, the privilege prices will be 40% lower for the whole of September. Please check it out if you want to read the advanced chapters. If you had already bought the privilege, please ignore this message. Chapter 479. I sent him 3 people. A brutal battle followed later that evening. The walls surrounding the estate of House Shakewell couldn't stop the relentless assault of the city defense forces siege units. The seemingly sturdy walls quickly collapsed in just half an hour. House Shakewell's troops tried to stop the city defense forces from advancing, but they were overwhelmed by the enemy's numbers. At this moment, inside the estate's main mansion. "Shit! Where are they? Didn't you say that you had already sent them a message?" Peterson's voice was shaking with anxiety. His retainers were also panicking, and there were even a few of them who looked like they were about to have a mental breakdown. "My lord, did they betray us too?" one of his retainers said with uncertainty. Hearing this, Peterson slammed his armrest in anger. "They dare betray me? This is an act of treason." He was so furious that his eyes seemed to blaze with flames. "It's because of that bastard Marlin's treasonous tongue. If he hadn't spoken all that bullshit in the city hall, this wouldn't have happened. What should we do, my lord? Their troops are marching here as we speak." Rubbing his temples, Peterson took a heavy, deep breath. "Including the warriors I have bribed, we have around 4,000 soldiers. If we properly use our familiarity with the layout of the estate, we might win against the city defense forces." Thinking about this, he gradually calmed down. "Don't panic. We still have a chance to turn things around." His words brought some light to his retainer's eyes. "Here's what we should do. General, the enemies are retreating towards the main mansion. Should we give chase? Marlin furrowed his eyebrows. He could feel that something was amiss, but he could not put his finger on it. Strange. Their formation was all over the place earlier, so how were they able to retreat properly in that chaos? Hold on. Don't you find it strange? He sent his young adjutant a heavy look. What do you mean, sir? The adjutant replied with a confused expression. Marlin explained his concerns, which made the adjutant's face turn serious. Are you saying that this could be a deliberate setup to ambush us? Marlin nodded with a grim look. It might be so. Our soldiers aren't familiar with the estate's layout, so they wouldn't be able to properly react to an ambush. He added. He thought deeply for a moment before giving an instruction. Gather the troops. Don't let them wander separately. Yes, sir, replied the adjutant with a grimace. Wait, Marlin called out when he saw this. You are not in good condition. You should get treated first. I will be fine, sir. The young adjutant grinned with a pale face. A few hours later, the dark clouds disappeared, revealing the bright moon above the sky. At this moment, Alaric was outside his tent, looking at the shining moon with an unreadable expression. There is only an hour left before midnight, he mumbled. Even without a clock, he could approximately tell the time based on the positions of the stars. Suddenly, he heard the sound of an approaching horse. Turning his head, he saw that it was Giovanni rushing towards him on his horse. Alaric! The guy pulled the reins and jumped off his horse when he was only a few meters from him. He then walked towards Alaric with long, quick strides. Is there still no word from that Marlin guy? Hearing this, Alaric shook his head. I haven't received a word from him yet. Giovanni frowned. Did he perhaps fail to convince the aristocrats? Alaric shook his head. Impossible. I sent some people to help him out. There is no way he will lose. When Sicus informed him that a part of the city's defense forces had betrayed Marlin, Alaric immediately sent a small group of skilled warriors to support Marlin. Giovanni was surprised. You did? Why didn't I hear of this? Alaric chuckled. Because I didn't tell anyone, you dumbass. Giovanni's face twitched, but he was already used to this, so he didn't give much of a reaction. Who did you send this time? He looked curiously at him. Alaric smiled faintly and replied, I just sent 3 people. Azazel, Sicus, and Galliner. If it's those 3, there is no way for them to lose. Giovanni rubbed his chin thoughtfully. While they were chatting, they suddenly noticed a warrior approaching them with an urgent look. Your Highnesses, they are back, shouted the warrior. Sir Galliner and the others are coming here with the warriors of Midgard. Alaric and Giovanni glanced knowingly at each other when they heard this. Marlin could still not believe it. When they were about to charge at the main mansion of House Shakewell, they found out that there was a trap waiting for them. More than 2,000 of his troops were killed in that trap, including his young adjutant. He thought that they would all perish in that moment, but 3 warriors suddenly appeared and turned the situation around. Those 3 warriors broke through the enemy encirclement and saved the Trap City defense forces. He saw them kill hundreds of enemies in just a few minutes. Not even the most skilled warriors of House Shakewell could stop them. They were unstoppable. Thinking about this, he turned his head and looked at the 3 warriors riding on their horses in front of him. They were wearing the armor of the city defense force, but he knew that they weren't part of his troops. He recalled the man who had introduced himself as Warwick. He remembered that these 3 warriors were with him when they were negotiating. We're here. A deep voice interrupted his thoughts. The one who spoke was the Demonkin. Marlin didn't know his name, so he didn't bother to respond. He just nodded his head. A moment later, he was taken deeper into the camp where he saw a big tent. He is waiting for you inside. The Demonkin gestured for him to enter the tent. All right. Chapter 480, Marlin's answer. Upon stepping inside the tent, Marlin thought that only Warwick would be there. But other than him, there was another person who had almost the same facial features except for his golden hair. It's good to see you again, General Marlin. Alaric smiled while gesturing at the guy to take his seat. Thank you. Marlin's eyes alternated between the 2 people in front of him. Are they brothers? Alaric, is this the guy you were talking about? Giovanni crossed his arms with a disinterested expression. Alaric, did I hear it correctly? I thought his name was Warwick. Did he give me a fake name? Marlin furrowed his eyebrows in confusion. Alaric nodded with a chuckle. That's right. This is Marlin, the commander of Midgard's defense forces. General, this is my cousin, Giovanni. Hearing the introduction, Marlin saluted. It's an honor to meet you, my lords. Giovanni didn't say anything and just nodded in response. Alaric sent him a glare before smiling apologetically at Marlin. Please don't mind him, General. Anyway, let's get to the point. He took a pause, his eyes gradually turning serious. I assume you have already completed your task. I would have failed if it weren't for the people you sent, my lord. Marlin responded truthfully. Although it was embarrassing, he couldn't deny the impact of those 3 individuals during the battle. The very moment they appeared, the tempo of the battle changed. They were so skilled and powerful. Don't sell yourself short. Alaric shook his head. Marlin isn't weak. He is a skilled warrior and a capable commander. His opponent, Peterson Shakewell, was just too cunning and influential. General, how about working for me instead? If you agree, you can take everyone in your family with you. Alaric's words stunned Giovanni and Marlin. Why do you want to recruit an enemy general? Giovanni whispered. His eyes filled with disbelief. Alaric shook his head and chuckled. Why not? Giovanni couldn't believe his ears. You're insane. Alaric didn't bother to explain. He couldn't understand Giovanni's concern. Recruiting an enemy general was indeed a risky move. There was a high chance that the other party would just pretend to work for him and then betray him later on. However, Alaric trusted his instincts. Marlin, who was silent, suddenly replied, I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. Alaric felt a bit regretful to hear his refusal, but he didn't force the matter. I see. If you change your mind, don't hesitate to inform me. Marlin nodded. Meanwhile, Giovanni snickered in amusement. This guy actually refused Alaric's offer. I wonder how he would have answered if he knew our identities. A series of small talks followed. Alaric and Giovanni asked Marlin about the current situation of Midgard. The latter responded without missing any detail. Marlin didn't want to give them a reason to attack Midgard, so he answered truthfully. He informed them about the surviving aristocrats. He also told them about the allies of Peterson Shakewell who were currently imprisoned. An hour later, their conversation ended. That's all we wanted to hear. When you return, inform your people they open the gates for our troops. Alaric instructed. Marlin knew that this was his cue to leave. He stood up and bowed deeply. I follow your commands. Just as he was about to leave, Alaric called out to him. Hold on. Marlin nervously turned around and looked at him. Is there anything else, my lord? With a faint smile, Alaric said. Warwick isn't my real name. I am Alaric. Hearing this, Marlin repeated the name in his mind. Alaric, I will remember you. There was a mixture of emotions in his heart. Anger, rage, awe, respect. I will take my leave now, Lord Alaric. Marlin quickly hid his emotions, afraid that it might alert the other party. Chucking, Alaric waved his hand. After Marlin left, a figure appeared next to Alaric. It was Sikas, who was still dressed in the armor of Midgard's city defense force. Your Highness, I felt killing intent from him. Do you want me to silence him? Sikas spoke emotionlessly. Hearing this, Alaric shook his head. Leave him be. For now, just keep an eye on him. I obey your commands. Sikas nodded before taking a step back. Giovanni, who was seated next to Alaric, glanced at Sikas with a hint of fear. Since when was he here? I didn't even sense his presence. First there's Galliner and now there's this guy. Just how many monstrous warriors are working for this damn bastard? Giovanni was a bit jealous. He also had a group of talented people on his side, but they couldn't compare to Alaric's retainers. While he was immersed in his thoughts, Alaric's voice drifted over. Midgard has already been conquered, but there might still be remnants loyal to Haroun's imperial family in the city. You should tell everyone to be careful. Giovanni nodded at his words. I know. In Helona, there was an internal conflict between two separate factions. One faction was led by Leroy's house Durova, and the other faction was a union between multiple aristocratic houses. Venerable, why would you tell us to surrender to those vermin? We can still fight. Besides, we still have you on our side. He is right, Venerable. Helona's defenses are impregnable. Those bastards wouldn't be able to besiege the city. We just need to wait for reinforcements from the capital. Leroy almost had the urge to kill these people. He could feel that they didn't take him seriously. Although he was a venerable and held a high aristocratic position, he was born a commoner. They were subtle with it, but he could sense the prejudice behind their words. Why do you want us to surrender, Lord Venerable? An aged voice suddenly echoed. Turning his head, Leroy's face darkened. Lemuel, I really want to tear this bastard apart. Leroy didn't like this cunning old man. He even thought of killing him. However, Lemuel had a huge influence on Helona, and killing him would only spoil his plans. With a deep look, Leroy spoke. The Estanian troops.